What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Femme Sasuke is secretly a girls and likes Naruto Sakura bashing? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. The Rouge Shinobi ran with everything he had, weaving around the trees of the forest. He moved with every fiber of his being trying to lose his pursuers. Just as the sun had gone down they had come out of nowhere and forced him to flee from his camp. It had taken all of a few moments for them to render him helpless, and now all he had was a kunai left. His breathing was starting to get ragged and his limbs were getting sore. He had been running for at least an hour from these monsters. Damn, who were they, he thought to himself. A noise from above caught his attention just in time to see a kunai headed straight for him, turning slightly, but enough. The Rouge managed to dodge the weapon and kept moving on. He grimaced as the pain in his arm throbbed in pain. His pursuers had injured his arm earlier and now he could barely lift it. It bled all down his arm as he ran, leaving drops of blood on the ground. From his side he saw a glimmer as two more kunai came flying for him, aimed at his legs. Damn! He yelled as he jumped to a branch in the trees above and tried to lose them in the thick brush. It was a mistake on his part as a fist came out of the shadows and collided with his face. The Rouge went sprawling to the ground with a crash. He lay there for a moment before sitting up. He tried to get up, but before he could he felt a presence behind him. A cold drop of sweat ran down his neck as a shiver ran down his back. Slowly the shinobi turned to look at the person behind him. The man was about 5'5", wearing a Junin vest and garbs. His skin was white, and his dark black hair hung down in the front but was spiky in the back. On his forehead was a headband of the Hidden Leaf Village, but what really held the Rouge's attention were his eyes. The Leaf Shinobi had eyes that were cold, calculating, and held no fear. They held something that told the Rouge that this man had seen hell and more and lived through it all triumphantly. Those eyes truly scared the Rouge. "Sasuke, you don't have to glare at the guy, I think you might make him piss himself," came a girlish voice from above. "TCH. Then why don't we take care of this so we can go back? This was a waste of a mission if you ask me," Sasuke said, crossing his arms over his chest. The Rouge heard two more people come jumping down from the trees. They both wore the same outfit as the other, except for their headgear. The man wore a mask over his mouth and a leaf headband that covered his left eye over the rest of his face, leaving only his right eye showing. The man stood at about 5'9", and the way he held himself the Rouge could tell. He was a veteran, battle-hardened through a lifetime of fights and war. The other one was a young woman at 5'2" with pinkish hair, pulled back and held by her leaf headband. Though she looked innocent enough, she had a look in her that said she was ready for anything. The woman headed for the Rouge. She knelt next to him and gave him stern look. "I'm going to heal your arm, but I warn you now, you try anything and my teammates will cut you down, understand?" The Rouge just nodded. "Why bother Sakura? We're just taking him back and then he's going to prison for interrogation. What's the point of healing him now?" Sasuke said, watching the Rouge. A laugh came from above the group, making the Rouge look up to the trees. It had been the same voice from earlier. "That's just Sakura's kindness, Sasuke. You should know that by now, Teme," laughed the voice. Sasuke looked to the trees and smirked. Yeah, now get down here, ya dope." The Rouge looked behind him as moment in the branches above shook. Out of the brush above Sasuke a person jumped to the ground. They landed next to Sasuke kneeling, then rose, giving Sasuke a look like she was saying, "Shut it." The newest of the shinobi stood at about 5 foot and seemed to be the strangest to the Rouge. Unlike the others, she didn't wear Junin vest or even chunin. No, the young girl wore an open black and orange jacket with a fishnet shirt and a blue tank top underneath, revealing a bit of her midriff. Her pants were orange and went to just above her ankles. On her right thigh she had a kunai pouch. Her hair was a golden yellow and tied up into long twin tails that went down to her lower back. Though it was dark, he could see that her eyes were a blue color that matched the sky in both wonder and glory. On her cheeks she had 3 marks on each side that made it look like she had whiskers. Then lastly the Rouge noticed the leaf headband properly placed on her forehead. She made her way over to the Rouge and Sakura. The Rouge couldn't help but wonder about the girl. Out of all the shinobi there, she seemed harmless. What was she doing with a group of elites? This could be it. "How's it looking, Sakura-chan?" the blonde asked, bending over to see. Sakura sighed. Not long, we can get him moving in a few minutes. Just let her work, Naruko. We'll be back in the village in no time, and then we can head down to Ichiraku's for some ramen," said the Cyclops shinobi. Quickly turning and putting her hand behind her head, Naruko turned towards Sasuke. "Now that's what I'm talking about. Kakashi-sensei, that's the best news I've heard all day," she said with a grin. Sakura stopped her healing and looked to Kakashi. "You shouldn't jinx us like that, you never know when we might." That's when the Rouge decided to act. Jumping up, he came up behind Naruko and held last kunai he had to her neck. Holding her one arm roughly and sticking the blade in just enough to make her neck bleed a drop, the Rouge turned her around so he could watch the others, who were all watching him but hadn't moved an inch. "Back off. I'll cut her pretty little throat if you come any closer." No one moved, but at the same time, the Rouge got the impression that the others weren't worried either. "What's wrong, aren't you scared for your little friend here?" Someone sighed. The Rouge looked to Sasuke, who looked bored and was yawning. When he had finished, he looked at them with a plain expression. "Can we hurry this up? I want to get back to the village, ya dope." Furiated, the Rouge yelled, "Who are you calling a DOP? Oh, shut it, you teme," was all the Rouge heard before he felt a great force hit him in the chest that sent him flying into a tree behind him, breaking his ribs and the tree at the same time. Barely able to sit up, the Rouge looked at Naruko. She turned and he saw her eyes had changed. Now they had red around them and they had gone golden, while her pupils were square. Coughing up blood, the Rouge asked one question, "Who are you guys?" Her eyes changing back to normal, Naruko smiled and put her hands behind her back. "Us? Why, just Konoha's Shinobi Team 7. 3 hours later, Hokage's office. Good work out there, capturing that Rouge shinobi and bringing him back alive all in a matter of hours. I would expect nothing less from our top shinobi," Hokage Tsunade said with a prideful smile upon her face. Tsunade sat at her desk facing the 4 shinobi as they bowed, thanking her. "Well, I'm sure you're all tired, go and rest, I'll see you all in 2 days, dismissed," she said, waving them off. As they stepped out of the office and closed the door, Sakura took a big stretch. "Well, that was eventful. You guys want to do something before heading off?" Kakashi brought his hand up. "Sorry, going to pass tonight, guys. I've got to get ready for another mission tomorrow." And without another word he vanished in a cloud of smoke. TCH, that's so him, vanishing like that. "I'm in, so what you got in mind?" Sasuke looked at Naruko and Sakura. Putting a finger to her chin and looking up, "How about, oh hell, we can just go to Ichiraku's. Bet you're up for that, huh, Naruko?" she said, smiling to Naruko. Naruko normally would have been jumping up and down for joy, but she wasn't. Instead, she just shook her head and gave them a small smile. "Sorry guys, I have something to do." Both Sasuke and Sakura were a little shocked, and before they could say anything, Naruko gave them a small wave, muttered, "Later," and ran off. They watched as she descended the stairs before looking at each other with questioning looks. Sasuke spoke first. "What's up with her?" Sakura shrugged. "I don't know. She's never turned ramen down before." She thought about it for a moment, then popped her fist on her hand. "Oh," she smiled at Sasuke. He gave her a look. "What?" She linked her arm with his and snuggled into him. Maybe she finally found a guy. Sasuke thought about that. It never seemed like she had ever looked. "You think?" he said as they began walking, heading out arm in arm. After Sakura thought about the idea more, she wasn't so sure. If it was true, then who was it? She had never mentioned anyone. Truthfully, Sakura had once thought maybe she had a thing for Sasuke, but she had never said anything. And when Sasuke and her had started going out, Naruko had been nothing but supportive. "Well, we can ask her tomorrow," thought Sakura. "Let's go grab a bite." She looked up at his face. He smiled down at her. "Sure." 5 minutes later, Naruko's apartment. Naruko opened the door to her apartment and stepped in. As she closed the door, she put her back to it and slid down until she sat on the floor. Slowly she pulled her knees up and sat there hugging her knees, her face buried in them. After a few minutes, she looked up, her eyes with small tears in them. She quickly wiped them away and got up. Her apartment was set. All that was left was her bag. Walking into her room, she started gathering some clothes and tools, then began to pack them in her backpack. When she was finished, she was sitting on the floor, her bag between her legs as she sat kneeling on the floor. She just sat there hugging her bag until she noticed the photo on the dresser. Getting up, she picked up the photo, walked over to her bed and sat on the corner. Holding the photo in both hands, she traced the lines of the face on the photo with her thumb. It was the photo from the day she had joined Team 7. Sasuke on the left, Sakura in the middle, her on the right and Kakashi behind them with a hand on both Sasuke's and her head. Naruko remembered that day so well she could replay it in her head over and over. A tear fell onto the photo, and before Naruko could stop them more flowed from her eyes. She never looked away from the photo, remembering all the things that had happened to them over the years. The land of waves, the Chunin exams, the fight with Gaara, Sasuke leaving. That memory truly hurt when she remembered it. The years between that and then the war. Finally, after all that struggling, she had got Sasuke to return and for the village to accept him. It had been a year since then and she had truly treasured every moment since. But now, wiping her eyes, she set the picture back onto the dresser and reached under her pillow. She pulled out an orange book out that had the symbol of the hidden leaf on it. Taking it to her desk, she opened it and began to write. As her last entry, she wanted it to be full of spirit, but halfway through she had to put down some of her grimmer thoughts. She wrote for about an hour. When she was done, she laughed a small chuckle. If only Master Jiraiya could see her now, writing just like him. I bet he would have been proud. She thought to herself as she got up and set the book back under her pillow. Turning to the clock, she noticed it was about 9. She gave a small simple smile. Just enough time to grab a bite to eat before seeing Granny. Grabbing her bag, she headed to her door, but as she reached for the doorknob, she stopped. She turned around and looked at the room. Her first room had been destroyed in the attack by Pain, but this one was an identical match. It held many memories. For a moment she let the memories flood into her. Then taking a deep breath, she opened the door and left. Few moments later, Ichiraku's Naruko entered the ramen stand with a grin that put all others to shame. "Hey Pops." Tucci turned to see his favorite customer and gave her a greeting smile. "Naruko. Welcome, glad you could make it. I was just getting ready to close, but I could make one more dish." Naruko cheered. "You're the best, Pops." Sliding onto the end stool, she put her bag next to the bar. She looked around but didn't see any of the others. "Girls gone already?" His back turned to her, making the ramen. Tucci nodded. "Yay, they headed out early today. Gonna have a girls' night or something." "Why, this old man not enough company?" he said with a smirk. Giving him a smirk back. "All the company this girl needs, as long as you make the ramen," she said with a laugh. Faking being hurt, he put a hand to his head. "Oh, the pain, no respect for the chef." They laughed together. Tucci turned and brought over the bowl. "Here you go, enjoy." Naruko licked her lips, grabbed some chopsticks and put her hands together. "Oh, I will. Itadakimasu." That's when Tucci noticed the backpack. "Hey, you headed out on another mission already?" Naruko's eyes twitched as she had hoped he wouldn't notice the bag. She took a bite of food then answered, "Not exactly." He gave her a questioning look. "Oh?" She wouldn't look him in the eyes and kept eating. Tucci knew Naruko well enough that he knew she was hiding something. "Look kiddo, if ya need someone to talk to, I'm here," he said, leaning on the counter a bit. She still didn't look up. "I know, I'm just going away for a bit. Taking some time off, ya know." Sighing, he let it go. She wasn't a child anymore, even if he felt she was just like a daughter to him. "Okay, but just remember that I always have ear open," he said, giving her a sincere smile. "Naruko, that you?" they heard a similar female voice say from outside. Next thing, Sakura and Sasuke popped in. Before they noticed, Naruko slid her foot to her bag and slid it behind the counter more, making it harder for them to see it. Tucci took notice. Naruko gave them a half wave. "Hey guys." Sasuke had that normal look, but Sakura looked annoyed. "What the heck, Naruko, you said you had plans. We were going to come here together," she said as she approached, pointing at Naruko. Giving a worried laugh and raising her hands defensively. "Yeah, sorry about that. Plans got cancelled." That seemed to calm Sakura down a bit. "Oh. Sorry to hear that." She sat down next to Naruko and Sasuke next to her. Sasuke looked to Tucci. "Two more, okay?" Tucci gave him a grin. "Sure, no problem. Who could say no to you three?" he said with a laugh and turned to whip up some more ramen. Sakura looked back to Naruko. "So who was it?" "Who was what?" she said, taking another bite. "Who was your date with Baka? What else?" This even got Tucci's attention. Naruko ended up choking and spitting out a bunch of her noodles. "Hua hhhhhhh," she said with a noddle hanging out of her nose. Sakura and Tucci laughed while Sasuke gave a small chuckle. You had a date with someone, didn't you? That's why you ran out on us earlier, wasn't it? Sakura asked as she started to calm down. Taking a napkin and wiping up her mess, she shook her head. No. I have no idea where you got that idea from. Oh, I just figured that what it had to be for you to pass up ramen. If it wasn't that, what was it? Naruko thought about how to answer. She really hadn't thought about an excuse, so her brain scrambled up the easiest answer. I had to clean my room. Sasuke looked over at her with a look saying he found that hard to believe. You, the ramen queen of Konoha. No wait, the world. Passed up ramen to clean your room? Tucci brought the ramen for Sakura and Sasuke. Y'all little hard to believe there. Naruko shrugged. I had been putting it off for a while now, and it really needed to be done, sorry. Sasuke and Sakura seemed to believe it as they dug into their bowls. But Tucci looked down to behind the counter at the bag that Naruko had brought in. It made him worry a bit at how she seemed to be lying to her closest friends. He was about to say something, but Naruko looked at him and her eyes asked him not to say anything, so he stayed silent. They ate in silence for a while when Naruko broke the quiet. Do you guys remember when we first joined Team 7? Well, of course, it was one of the best days of my life. Sakura said. Sasuke just nodded while chewing on a mouthful of food. Yeah, it was one hell of a day. Naruko laughed and started going into the events from that day. The bell test and all the lessons that Kakashi had taught them. From there they went on to talk about all the adventures that had shared. Most of the time they laughed at the silly things they did as young ninja. They talked for a couple of hours until Sakura started to yawn. Well, this was fun, but I think we need to head out, she said, getting up. Sasuke pulled out his wallet and paid for the two of them and gave Tucci a thank you nod. Sakura linked their arms and they started out. Later dope, CYA round tomorrow? Naruko felt a tug at her heart at the lie she knew she had to say. She gave him a little wave. Sure, CYA around. Sakura looked over her shoulder as they reached the exit. Night, Naruko. Night, she said, but not loud enough for anyone but Tucci to hear. She stared at her empty bowl with her arms crossed on the counter. You okay with that? Naruko looked up at Tucci that was looking at her with worry. She took a deep breath and looked back at the entrance. All had to be. As she pulled out her frog wallet to pay, Tucci raised his hand. On the house tonight, kiddo. Naruko could feel the tears trying to come up, but she held them back and gave him a smile. Thanks, Pops. You really are the best. She grabbed her bag from behind the counter. Tucci came up to her and put his hand on her shoulder and gave her a warm smile. You be careful out there. And remember, there's always warm ramen waiting here for ya. She nodded and gave him a smile back, then gave him a hug. Tucci was taken aback for a moment, then just returned the hug. Without any other words, Naruko left Ichiraku's. When she was outside, she looked back at the ramen restaurant and remembered when she was young and all the time she ate here. She would always remember this place. Turning in the direction of the Hokage Rock and the Hokage's tower, Naruko headed off to see Granny Tsunade. Few moments later, outside the Hokage's office, Naruko stood there frozen in front of the door to Tsunade's office. She knew she was still her, there was a light on inside and she had always been here late recently. Finally bringing up her courage, she knocked on the door. Come in, came Tsunade's voice from the other side. Opening the door, Naruko stepped in and closed the door behind her. Tsunade was at her desk reading a scroll and writing something on papers to her right. The light flickered and Naruko noticed the bottle of sake resting next to the lamp. She gave a silent giggle. But remembering her reason for being there sobered her up, and in a low small voice she addressed Tsunade. Hey there, Ba-chan. Tsunade looked up, then back to her work. Naruko, I've told you before, stop calling me that. Naruko stood in front of her desk and waited. So, what is this about? You've never come to my office so late before, is something wrong? Tsunade asked without stopping her work. Naruko stood there, unable to speak. She put her hands behind her back and then back in front. Finally she put her arms to her side and clenched her fists and looked down at the floor. Naruko, if you're not going to say anything, I'm leaving Konoha. Tsunade froze at these words and slowly looked to Naruko. She was frozen in place, her hands going white from gripping. Placing her work aside, Tsunade out her elbows on the desk and set her chin on her hands. What's this about? She asked, plain and simple, trying not to let any emotion out. She needed to have a clear head. I have to leave. I just have to leave. Naruko said, still staring down at the ground. You can't just leave, Naruko. As a kunoichi of the leaf you have responsibilities. Let alone the fact that you're a hero in the shinobi world. You are an important person to the leaf and its people. And then there's the 9 tails. I know you work together now, but as Hokage I cannot just Granny, I came here because I wanted to let you know and to ask you to let me go. I didn't come here for permission. If you can't let me go I'm going to have to run, and I really don't want to have to do that. I promise that I'm still loyal to the leaf, and that one day I'll return. I just don't know when that will be. Naruko looked up at Tsunade with eyes that pleaded, begged, and even maybe cried for her help. Tsunade stared into those eyes and saw something in them, but was unsure of what it was. Naruko wasn't lying to her, that much she could tell. She would remain loyal in return, and if she had to leave she would do it no matter who tried to stop her. Tsunade weighed the options in her mind. She sighed and stood up, putting her hands flat on the desk. There's nothing I can say that will stop you? No. Will you tell me what this about at least? There was hesitation, but only a little. No. Tsunade sighed again, then pulled out a small scroll from her desk, opened it and wrote down Naruko's name and a mission. Naruko Uzumaki, you are hereby ordered to leave the leaf on this important mission. Naruko stood at attention. You are to wander the world and gather information. Information that will be helpful to the village, whether it be common inventions, sciences, crop conditions, spy networks, or threats to the village. You are to send reports back to the village. In this way we of the leaf will grow from the things that you learn of out in the world. Is this understood? Naruko nodded. You are to return when you feel you have helped to improve the village enough. She finished the scroll and rolled it up, tying it tight. She placed the scroll at the front of her desk, then turned and walked to her window. Will that work for you? She said in a sad tone. Yeah, Naruko said, grabbing the scroll and placing it in her pocket. She watched Tsunade for a moment before walking over behind her and giving her a tight hug. Thank you. Tsunade reached up and held onto Naruko's hands. You better send plenty of reports, you hear me? I will. Naruko let go and headed off to the door. As she opened it she gave a slight bow to Granny Tsunade, who just gave her a small wave. Naruko left the office and grabbed her pack. She was set, she headed for the exit. Little did she notice the person that had heard the majority of their conversation standing in the shadows. 10 minutes later, gate of the hidden leaf. Naruko walked with her pack on her back, scroll in hand toward the gate entrance to the village. She stopped a ways away and looked at the gate. She had passed by it so many times she had taken it for granted, but it was the door to her home. Remembering back when she had left for training, it hadn't seemed so hard, but this time it was damn near impossible. Thought this time she knew it would be a lot longer than just 2.5 years before she returned. Breathing in the cold air of the night she took a step toward the gate. Leaving Naruko? Naruko turned to the voice that came from behind and saw Kakashi walk out from the shadows. Kakashi-sensei? Naruko said, surprised. He walked up to her with a look in his eye that she couldn't tell if it was disappointment or sadness. She looked away. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Naruko turned away from her teacher but didn't try to move away. Because, you would. She could feel the tears trying to surface, but she refused to let them. Try to stop you? He finished for her. Naruko nodded. He sighed, then walked around in front of her. Yeah, you're right. I would have, and I should now too, but I won't. You seem rather determined, and after what you told Lady Hokage. Well, he put a hand behind his head and looked at the gate. Kakashi figured she hadn't told Haruka either. He would have tried to stop her too. Did you tell anyone? He asked, looking back at her. She shook her head. Just Tucci, sorta. And Sasuke and Sakura? He saw her flinch at the names as he asked. Again she just shook her head. For a minute they just stood there, her head down and him watching her. Naruko is this about? Before he could finish, her head shoot up and she looked at him with those blue eyes that normally sparkled with life, but tonight they held fear. You know? She asked, fearful of the answer. I figured I out a while back. She took a step back from him. You know they wouldn't hate you, right? But he could see it in her eyes. She didn't know that, not for sure. Okay. He walked over and put a hand on her shoulder. Just remember, this is your home, you can always come back. You don't have to stay out there alone. Then just like that he walked back into the shadows of the night. Good luck. She watched as he left, and unsure of whether to smile or cry she made her way to the gate. After showing the Junin her pass, they let her through and she made her way down the path. She walked for a few minutes, then turned and looked back to the village. She was high enough where she could just start making out the buildings on the other side of the wall, and in the distance the Hokage wall stood proudly. "Sure about this, Kit?" Naruko heard a voice from within herself. Closing her eyes, she followed the voice to a forest like the one she was in. Only difference was everything was huge. She was the size of a bug compared to the trees around her. "Kurama," she called out into the woods. "Over here, Kit." The voice rumbled from behind her. She turned to see Kurama relaxing in a hole in the base of one of the giant trees. His tails curled around him and his arms crossed under his head. She gave a small smile and trotted over to him. She stood in front of him, patted him on the nose, then walked around and sat on his paw. "How you doing, Kurama? Shouldn't you be out catching some rabbits or something?" she teased. He huffed at her question. "Funny, like there's really anything to do here, though the scenery is better than that damn cell." He focused his huge eye on her. "You didn't answer my question." She was silent for a moment, pulling one of her left knee up and hugging it to her chest. "It's the only thing I can do, Kurama. Anything else I do will just cause trouble." He moved his head closer and pushed her to him. She fell onto his snout and leaned back into his fur between his eyes. "You think this won't cause trouble?" She curled up and leaned closer to him. "No, I know it will, but I figure this way is a lot less to deal with for everyone." He huffed. "You're going to be lonely." She sat up and patted him on the snout. "What are you talking about?" "I've got you, don't I?" She said it with a half smile. He gave a light grunt. "That you do, Kit, that you do." The world around Naruko started to fade and she found herself back on the trail outside the village. She looked back at the Hokage rock one last time. She let all the memories of the good and bad times in this place wash through her. She gave a sad smile and then bowed to the village. "Thank you." She stood up, turned and walked into the night. The morning was quiet in the village, hidden in the leaves. The people were rising just as the sun was. People walked from home to market starting their day. Not a cloud in sight and everything seemed normal. Over in the west part of the village, a lone house stood at the edge of the old Uchiha compound. It was a 2-floor house and larger than most. The sun was just starting to rise over the second floor, shining its light into the windows. In the third room, Sasuke was awoken by the sun shining in his face. "TCH, morning already?" he said as he rolled over, putting his arm over a slumbering Sakura. He watched as she slept soundly with a steady rhythm of her breaths. She faced him and he just studied her sleeping face. With a steady hand he brushed a strand of hair out of her face. He smiled before he slowly sat up. Careful not to disturb her, he slid out of bed and grabbed his clothes from the floor. He headed for the washroom down the hall and shut the door. Sakura woke up as he shut the door to the room. Without moving, she watched the sky outside the window. It looked like it was going to be a clear day, she thought as she stretched. She turned over so she was looking up at the ceiling and put her arms behind her head. "We should do something today, we hardly ever get days off like this. Maybe we can invite Kakashi and Naruko too, been too long since we last all did something together." She thought to herself as she listened to the noise of the village from bed. Finally deciding to get out of bed, she drew the covers back and grabbed her undergarments from the floor. Once she had those on, she grabbed a robe and wrapped it around herself. Once fastened, she headed down to the kitchen. Opening the fridge, she checked to see what they had. Not much, just enough for a light breakfast. Gonna have to go shopping later, I guess," she said, grabbing 3 eggs and the milk. Setting the eggs in the sink and the milk on the counter, she grabbed a pan and started cooking. As she was making the eggs, she opened the cue board to get cups for the milk. When she did, she noticed one of the 3 cups they had was cracked. Picking it up, she remembered when Naruko had gotten them for her and Sasuke when they had first started going out. They were blue, red, and orange, to symbol their team, Naruko had said. It was the orange cup that was cracked. "That's odd. How did you break?" she wondered. 2 arms reached around and grabbed her around her waist, startling her, causing her to drop the cup and having it shatter all over the floor. "Ops, sorry about that. Thought you hurt me coming down the stairs." Sasuke apologized, picking her up and moving her away from the broken glass. Still in the air, she giggled, "Sasuke, I need to clean that up." After setting her down, he grabbed the broom and shook his head. "I got it, I scared you after all." He bent down and started sweeping up the mess. "Thanks," she said, still thinking about the cup. "Hey hun?" He said without looking up. Was that cup broken? As he got up and moved for the trash he shrugged. Don't think so, but doesn't really matter now. We can grab another one later. She nodded but still had an odd feeling, but not knowing what it was she went back to her cooking. Sasuke headed for the door, slipped his sandals on and went outside. As soon as he did he was blinded by the sun for a minute. He shielded his eyes with his hand as his eyes adjusted to the brightness of the day. Once he could see again he moved to his mailbox and pulled out a paper. Turning to head back, Sasuke noticed something above his house. It was a small brown bird. Lifting his hand to the bird, it flew down and landed in his palm. A summons to the Hokage, eh? Got it, he said, lightly tossing the bird back into the air. He watched it fly off, then headed back inside. As he entered the kitchen he could smell the eggs and was disappointed that they didn't have time to enjoy the breakfast. Eggs and toast are about done. Sakura looked to Sasuke, who was leaning on the wall with his arms crossed. What's wrong? He sighed and moved to sit down. We don't have much time to eat. We just got summoned to see the Hokage. He took a sip of milk from his blue cup. Turning back to the cooking eggs and grabbing a plate. Well dang. I was hoping to get some shopping done this morning. Hopefully it's nothing and we still have the rest of the day. She scooped the eggs onto the plate then set it in front of Sasuke. Thanks. He took a bite and another drink. That would be nice, but knowing our luck we have another dumb mission that needs immediate results. Sakura nodded as she washed her hands in the sink and chugged the rest of her milk. Okay, well then let's get changed and head out. Sasuke finished the last of the eggs, nodded, got up and dropped his plate into the sink then headed upstairs with her. As they headed up the stairs her ass was in perfect whacking range, so Sasuke gave it a light smack. She jumped as he hit and made a little noise, then ran the last few steps, turned to him rubbing her rear end. Hey now, none of that, she said with a playful tone. He smirked. You didn't seem to mind last night. Uyu, she said, turning and going into the room. He just smiled and followed. There they changed into their Junin uniforms and grabbed their gear. Once everything was set they made their way back down, with less flirting this time much to Sasuke's discontent. Once they had locked up they made their way into the street and started heading for the tower. Sasuke with his hands in his pockets and Sakura with hers behind her back as she watched the sky. They walked in silence as they made their way forward, just enjoying each other's company. Sakura watched the sky, then the people around her doing their usual thing. Mothers watched their kids playing as they scampered in and out of the walk path. Grandparents sitting on their front porch reading books. Everything seemed normal, but for some reason, Sakura couldn't shake this feeling that something was wrong. She glanced over at Sasuke, who seemed tense. She wondered if he noticed it too. Hey Sasuke, is it just me or does something seem off today? She asked, throwing her arms up and around her head as she watched the people around them. Not stopping but looking around more, Sasuke nodded. Yeah, ever since I got up this morning actually, something has just felt off. Like, it's too quiet or something. If we were in the field I would say that it smelled like a trap, but here and now. I agree, I didn't really notice till we left the house, but you're right. It's no different than normal, but it seems quieter. She continued to watch people as they passed and wonder what was nagging at her, but no matter what she thought of she couldn't put her finger on it. The rest of their walk was silent as they both tried to figure out why everything seemed off. No matter what they saw of the normal village they had grown to love, everything had this quiet, silent, dull feeling to it, like everything was hollow. As they neared the Hokage tower, Sasuke spoke up. I don't like this, whatever it is something's wrong. Let's get going. Maybe the Hokage has noticed this too. Sakura nodded and they broke into a run. When they reached the tower they didn't stop even when the entrance secretary yelled at them too. They just kept running, right up the stairs and to the office door of Lady Tsunade. Sakura reached to knock on the door. Where is she? Why is she gone? The voice from the office startled them a bit. Sakura looked to Sasuke. Iruka-sensei? She whispered. He nodded. They both scooted closer to the door to hear better what was said. Inside, Iruka Amino had his hands slammed on the Hokage's desk, looking at her with great anger. She sat on the other side, chin on her hands, as she calmly faced the anger of the well-loved Chunin teacher. As I already said, Iruka, she is gone, and at the moment to where, I do not know. She said calmly, trying not to provoke the man. She knew he was upset. I mean, so was she, but she had had time to simmer. His face contorted with anger as he clenched his fists, crushing something under his hand, and walk away then back. When I woke up this morning I found this on my front door," he said, holding up a crunched-up envelope. Tsunade sighed and lowered her head so her eyes weren't visible. "I'm sorry that's how you found out." Iruka just shook his fist. "No. I don't care that this is how I found out. I want to know why I had to end up finding out at all. Why did you let her go?" In the corner of his eyes small tears were forming, but they didn't fall. He wouldn't let them. Without raising her head, "Iruka, as Hokage I am forced to make tough decisions. Decisions that are in the best interest of the village as a whole. Don't you dare think this wasn't one of them. I can't act on personal feeling every time I want to. Letting her go was one of the hardest damn things I've ever had to do. But considering the alternative, I don't regret the decision." A single tear fell from under her hands to the desk. On the other side of the office door, Sakura and Sasuke looked at each other with confused looks. Sakura mouthed the word, "Who?" to Sasuke. He just shrugged his shoulders, but in the back of his mind he had a bad feeling about this. Iruka noticed Tsunade's tear. His arms fell to his side and he looked down at the floor. He was so full of emotions that he was acting out, like a damn child. He was ashamed of himself. "I'm sorry Lady Hokage, you're right. I let my emotions run me." She looked up at him with a small but warm smile. "I wouldn't expect any less from one of the few people who truly knows her. You're like a father to her, you know?" Behind a closed door, two young shinobi were looking at each other with wide eyes as a fear entered their minds. Iruka brought the envelope up to look at it, and Tsunade, "Yeah. I know that a lot better now." He held the envelope close to his heart. "She said a lot in her letter, but most of it was how she really appreciated my support and care, that she would miss me scolding her." He gave a light laugh. "It's funny, I never realized how often I scolded till this morning, after I read this." She went on to say sorry for not giving me a proper goodbye and then a farewell. That she would really miss her scolding father. He wiped a couple of tears away from his face as Tsunade smiled. "That was pretty sweet of her." "Yeah." He looked back at her with a now calm face. "Did Naruko at least say why she was leaving?" At hearing their fears confirmed, both Sakura and Sasuke burst into the office. "What?" they both yelled, rushing up to the other two. Iruka jumped back a foot with a shocked look as Tsunade was now sitting straight up in her seat and trying to figure out when the two had started eavesdropping. Sakura was at Tsunade's desk, both hands flat as she stared at her master. What happened to Naruko? Sasuke stood in the middle of the room, hands clenched, waiting for an answer. When one didn't come right away. "Where is she?" Both Tsunade and Iruka looked at each other, then just stayed silent, looking down defeated. "Master," Sakura said with anger. "Why was she staying silent?" thought Sakura. Sasuke looked at Iruka, then to the letter he held. Sasuke's eyes went cold. "Naruko has left the village," said a voice from the window. Everyone in the room, startled, looked to find Kakashi sitting in the window, one leg holding him in place, the other hanging out the window. His arms were crossed over his chest while he looked out at the sky. "Kakashi," Tsunade and Iruka said. Sakura didn't say anything because she was frozen by the words he had spoken. Sasuke took 2 steps towards Kakashi, fists still clenched. "What does that mean?" Slowly Kakashi turned his head to look at Sasuke. His gaze was solid and cold. "It means exactly what I said. Naruko Uzumaki has left the Hidden Leaf Village." Sasuke knew what that meant from experience, but couldn't accept that. He rushed Kakashi and grabbed his vest by the collar and left him slightly. "No. You're lying." Behind him, Sakura finally unfroze and quickly went to Sasuke. Putting her hands on his arms, she had him lower Kakashi. She looked at Kakashi with a hopeful look. "But she's coming back, right? She going away for training or a mission or for foe?" Sasuke cut her off. "No, it's in his eyes, Iruka's letter, tone, Tsunade's demeanor, everything. She left, and she's not coming back." He turned away from Kakashi, unable to look at anyone. Sakura, finally understanding what was being said, slid to the floor. Her best friend, who had struggled with her through hell and back, had left them. Sakura remembered last night at Ichiraku's, all the memories they had talked about, laughed about. How when they had left that night she wouldn't look at them as they left. This was like when Sasuke had left all those years ago. A piece of her soul felt like it had just died. A single tear slid down her cheek, but she was too numb to notice. Sasuke crouched down next to her and hugged her shoulders. He too felt like something had broken inside him. He remembered back when his clan had been killed, the rage and sorrow, it was the same feeling. He had lost a part of his family again. Looking up to Kakashi, Sasuke asked, "What happened? Why did she leave?" Kakashi looked over to Iruka and Tsunade. Tsunade nodded. He sighed, not wanting to reveal his failure, but he had no choice, not in this matter. Well. And so Kakashi told everyone there what had happened between him and Naruko after she had run out of the office last night. Though he did leave out the part about why she had left. Since he only suspected what it was, he didn't feel it was his place to say. When Kakashi finished his part, Iruka retold his story about waking up and finding the letter on his front door that morning, then rushing here and confronting the Hokage. Finally Tsunade told her about her actions last night and the choice she had made. Sasuke and Sakura were silent throughout the entire tale, and when Tsunade finished, Sasuke stood up and just walked to the window next to Kakashi and looked at the village. Sakura, still sitting on the floor, didn't look up but asked, "Why, master? Why give her a mission and allow her to leave? Why? Sakura, you of all people should understand why. She came to me, mind made up and determined, and once that girl's made up, she's stubborn to a fault." Tsunade looked to Sasuke. After a moment she leaned back into her chair and looked at the ceiling. "When she told me that she would leave no matter what, I had to make a choice. Let her leave or try and stop her." "Why not stop her?" Sakura mumbled. Tsunade didn't even look down and was about to answer, but Kakashi beat her to it. "Sakura, if we had tried to force her to stay, she would have run, maybe even getting violent. Though I doubt she would do any great harm to any of the villagers, but still trying to stop Naruko, that's no easy task nowadays. Or have you forgotten how strong she has really become?" He paused for a moment to let that sink in. "If we had tried, we would have had casualties. And she hasn't become a rouge shinobi either." Sakura looked up at this, looking confused. Kakashi sighed. Had the shock scrambled her brain? Sasuke took over from there, still looking out the window. "With the mission Tsunade gave her, she has free rein to go anywhere for however long she needs without the village having to mark her as a missing nin. When a shinobi leaves their village, especially ones as strong as her, they are marked as a rouge and put into the bingo book with a hid reward for their life." He looked down at Sakura. "This way, at least she doesn't have a death sentence overhead while she out there." Finally coming out of her shock a bit, Sakura got up, nodding. They all stood there letting the situation sink into their skin until Sasuke walked over to Tsunade. "But you don't know why?" She shook her head. "No, she wouldn't tell me." "Iruka, do you have any idea?" Sadly he too shook his head. "I haven't even seen her in a while, been too busy with the exams and all. She's been troubled by something for quite a while now, but I figured she would talk to me or something before she did anything rash." Kakashi said. Sakura turned to her sensei. "What was it?" Kakashi hesitated. "I don't know exactly what was bothering her, just that she seemed off." He lied. He had a pretty good idea why she had left, but he still didn't think it was his place to tell others. Sakura got quiet again, but Sasuke looked back at Tsunade with a look of fire in his eyes. "Lady Hokage, I request a favor." Tsunade's eyebrow lifted. "And what would that be?" she said with a smirk, knowing full well what he was going to ask. "I would like a mission to retrieve the female baka known as Naruko Uzumaki," Sasuke said with a straight and serious face. Everyone else in the room got a grin on their face, all except Tsunade. She closed her eyes, thinking when she opened them, "As much as I would love to give you that mission, I don't think even you guys see a." "Hold on." Kakashi interrupted. Everyone looked to Kakashi. "Everyone here except you, Lady Tsunade, Naruko tried to avoid last night. That being because she had to tell you or you would have been in a tough spot politically. I'm sure she knew you would make the choice to let her go and therefore came to you, but the rest of us, if any of us had been there to stop her, I'm guessing she wouldn't have been able to go. The only reason I let her go was because of what I heard and hear, otherwise I would have argued with her all night. If Iruka had been there, I feel the same could be said, Sakura and Sasuke even more so." Tsunade thought about Kakashi's words, they made sense. Naruko avoided anyone that could have made her change her mind. "Damn, kid had been planning this for a while, huh?" Tsunade asked. "No doubt, for her to go through with this she needed time to work up her courage. Had any of us beside you tried to stop her last night, I doubt she would have left. Or at least her courage to do so would have been shattered." He looked to Sakura and Sasuke. "Out of all of us here, I think Sasuke and Sakura have the best chance to get her to come back willingly." Sakura was starting to look pumped up, determined. Iruka had a hopeful look on his face and Sasuke nodded, agreeing and coming to the same conclusion as Kakashi. Tsunade smiled, liking the explanation, and for her it was more than enough to send out an army to retrieve the Bakakunoichi. But if these two had a better chance than an army. Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, Tsunade yelled as she stood up suddenly and firmly. Ma'am, they both said together standing in front of Tsunade's desk. Waving an arm over her desk. You're hereby ordered to take on this S-class mission. She opened a drawer and pulled out a scroll, opened it on the table and quickly wrote in big letters. Bring the Baka Naruko Uzumaki back home. She rolled the scroll up, tied it, and handed to Sakura. You bring that Baka back, you hear? She said smiling. Iruka had a big grin while Kakashi smiled from underneath his mask. Both Sakura and Sasuke smiled and nodded. Yes ma'am. And without another word ran to the window and jumped out toward the village, knocking Kakashi over. Whoa, he said as he fell into the office. He laid there, his legs up against the wall. He had his eyes closed as he prayed to God that everything worked out. He hoped he didn't make a mistake by sending them. A minute later, rooftops of Hidden Leaf Village. Sasuke and Sakura jumped from roof to roof, headed for the village gate. As they moved, their smile from being excited to be going after their friend turned to grim looks as they thought on the question. Why did she leave in the first place? Sasuke? Sakura asked with her eyes grim. Yeah, I know. There was no need to say it. They wanted to know but neither knew anything for sure. That's when Sasuke stopped and thought of another important question. Sakura stopped, turned to him with a questioning look. What? We need to get moving, she's been gone since last night. He nodded. But do we have any idea which way she headed? Sakura's shoulders slumped. Damn, she thought for a moment. Then both of them looked at each other with a small glimmer of hope. Apartment? They said at the same time. Nodding, they rushed off to Naruko's apartment in hopes of finding some clue as to where she was headed. After a few moments they landed on the roof of Naruko's complex, then made their way down to her door. When they reached it they hesitated. What would they find inside? Everything gone or everything in a mess as she normally left it? With a determined stare, Sakura took a breath and twisted the doorknob. It was unlocked. The door swung open and both of them saw something that they just didn't expect. The room was clean and in order, something that they both couldn't ever remember seeing. Moving into the apartment they saw that everything was in order. Furniture was neat and organized, covered with white cloths, floors were vacuumed and mopped, and it even smelled fresh, the ideal clean. But there was nothing personal left. No pictures or trinkets. Sasuke walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge. There was nothing inside and it had been wiped clean. Sakura was at the table, clenched onto the chair, her grip turning her knuckles white and cracking the wood slightly. This is wrong. This is not a home, it's nothing. Sasuke moved from the kitchen to stand next to her and put a hand on her shoulder. Come on, we need to check around. Sakura nodded, but as she did she noticed there was something on the table, two actually. They were envelopes with names on them, Sakura and Sasuke. The two of them reached for their individual letters. For a moment they could only stare at them with a far-off look in their eyes. They both opened their letters and began to read. Dear Sasuke. Hey there Teme. Hope things are going well for ya. Ya don't start with me. I know that this is all probably one big annoying pain in your ass, right? Sorry about that. By now I've left the village and I'm sure you're at my place looking to give me a scolding. Glad I'm not there for that, hee. But in all seriousness I am sorry this was how our goodbye had to turn out. Sasuke, do you remember when you left the village and I swore that I would bring you back, no matter the cost? Because of that struggle to get you back I became a lot stronger. I won't say that it was a good thing that you left, because it wasn't, but if you hadn't I wouldn't have become so strong so fast. But if I could change the past I would still rather you had never left, then our team could have all grown stronger together. It would have been one hell of a time. That's one thing I miss Sasuke, all those times we spent together as kids, Sakura, Kakashi, you and me. We were one hell of a team even if you wouldn't admit it. When you came back to the village and I was able to get everyone to accept it, I was the happiest person in the world. Strike that last statement. Sakura beat me in the happiness, but I was definitely second. I want to thank you Sasuke for coming back, and thank you for being with Sakura. She really missed you and loves you. I hope you can see that. Try not to take her love for granted, okay? She has great strength but she still needs you there by her side. As to why I'm leaving, let's just say that I have something I have to face, and even with all my strength, I can't face it, not there in the village at least. Maybe one day I can return my demons defeated. Till then, please take care of the village and Sakura. And once again thank you. Your eternal friend and rival, Naruko Uzumaki. Sasuke finished reading the letter but couldn't bring himself to say anything. What was there to say? Looking over, Sakura was still reading her letter. Dear Sakura, I know this will be hard for you and I am truly sorry for this. I had hoped to tell you goodbye in person but realized a while back that I just couldn't do it. So I wrote these letters to those of you I cared about. First off, I want to assure you that I'm not going rouge. Well, at least that's my plan. I'm going to talk to Lady Tsunade in hope that she gives me her permission to leave. If she doesn't, well, let's not get into that. Just know that no matter where I am, I will still be loyal to the leaf. I'll never betray the village. Never. I'm sure you're asking yourself and others why I left. Well, I'm sorry, but you're not going to find an answer. Sorry. I have my reasons and I'm going to have to just leave it at that. I'm sure you're pissed off as hell right now, and to tell the truth, I'm glad I'm not there to get thrown through a wall, or 5 by you, hee. That would really hurt, you know, Sakura. Maybe try not to be so chakra-filled when you hit folks, okay? But when I think back of all the time you smacked me, I laugh. We went through so much together chasing Sasuke and saving the village. I can't remember a time when you weren't there supporting me, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Without your support, I know that I couldn't have gotten up after some of the things we went through. About that support you gave me, I think it's time you pass it on to Sasuke. I'm glad that you are finally with him, but I want you to remember he left. It caused unrest with people, and even though he's back, I'm sure people will still have a hard time accepting him completely. I'm sure you know this, but he would never ask for help, but he's going to need it even if he doesn't admit it. So please give Sasuke all that support that you once gave me. And again, thank you. Goodbye. Forever your teammate and friend, Naruko Uzumaki. Sakura finished her letter and let her arms fall to her side. She had so many feelings mixed up inside right now, she didn't know which one to let out. Sadness, anger, confusion, laughter over memories, pride in her friendship. There was just so much. Anything on where we can start looking? Sasuke asked. She shook her head, no, and nothing on why, just a thank you and a goodbye. Yeah, same here, Sasuke said, folding up the letter and placing it in his pouch. Sakura did the same with hers. They moved on and kept looking for anything that could lead them to their comrade. Sasuke took to going through Naruko's scrolls next to her TV while Sakura went into the bedroom. Looking around, she felt like she was in a stranger's home, or maybe a hotel room ready for new guests. Sakura sighed. Looking around, she found nothing until she looked at the bed. There was something under the pillow. She reached under and pulled out a book with the leaf symbol on the center. Curious, she opened to the first page. She felt a breath escape her. It was a diary, Naruko's diary. With haste she shut the book, not wanting to invade the privacy of her friend. But then the events of the day came flooding back to her. Sakura looked at the book, unsure. No choice, sorry Naruko, she said as she turned to the end of the written pages. She flipped through the pages looking for the last few entrees, not wanting to pry into too much of her friend's secrets. When she found the last 3 entrees, she began to read. As she read, her eyes became larger and larger as some of Naruko's secret became clear to Sakura. Oh Naruko, you baka, she said with a sad whisper. Find anything? Sasuke's voice came from the other room, startling her, causing her to slam the book closed and hide it behind her back. Nothing about where she went in here, Sakura called as she slid the book back under the pillow. Sakura joined Sasuke back in the living room. Nothing? He asked with a look that said he too had found nothing. She just nodded. Sasuke sighed. Maybe we can ask the gate guards. They might have seen at least which way she was heading. Still distracted by what she had read, Sakura just mumbled in agreement. Sakura? That's when they heard the door open. Both jumped a little and looked to see Kakashi walk in. Yo, sensei, what are you doing here? Sakura asked, glad for the interruption. He walked in looking around. I figured that you would have a hard time getting started, so I came to offer a little assistance. You mean to offer my assistance? Said a gruff voice. Pakun then jumped from behind Kakashi and landed on his shoulder. Oh, both Sasuke and Sakura got the idea right away. You're the best sensei, oh and you too Pakun. Sakura beamed. Kakashi just smiled as Pakun rolled his eyes as he hopped down and started to sniff around. He'll stay with you for about 2 days at max, enough to give you a direction at least. Kakashi explained. Pakun popped his head up. Alright. Got a good scent now, we can head out whenever. Sasuke gave a small smile and headed for the door with Sakura and Pakun close behind. Kakashi watched them go without a word. As soon as they were outside, all three burst into action and started for the gate. Sasuke let Pakun take lead, then yelled out, "Let the chase for the big baka begin." Two figures sat huddled together next to a crackling fire, just staring into the burning embers. That orange and yellow color that mesmerizes any viewer. The fire lit up the small area with a glow that made a sanctuary of light around the two. The glow reflected from their eyes that showed worry, doubt, and above all other sadness. The two looked tired and ragged, which under the circumstances was understandable. It had been 3 weeks since Sasuke and Sakura had set off on their mission to bring Naruko back, 2 since Pakun had to leave, 1 since they had all but lost Naruko's trail. All they knew was that Naruko seemed to be heading west, further and further her trail had gone, seeming like she never stopped. But last week in a small village they had lost her trail completely. They spent 3 days asking around about her, but no one had seen her. Trying to pick the trail up, they retraced the trail and tried another approach, but it hadn't panned out. Somewhere in this forest they had lost her completely, and it was weighing heavily on their shoulders. Sakura shivered as the wind cut through the trees and across the couple. Sasuke reached around and wrapped a protective arm around her. She gave him a half-hearted smile. He just continued to watch the fire, deep in thought. She watched him and wondered about his thoughts. She was sure they were about Naruko. Even hers were all about Naruko lately. It was nothing but endless questions. Where was she? How had she given them the slip? Had she known we were following her? What was she doing now? Why had she left? Why? That question was always there at the forefront for Sakura. And after reading some of Naruko's diary, she had a suspicion, but until she met and talked to Naruko face to face, she wasn't jumping to any conclusions. Was it me? Sasuke asked suddenly, causing Sakura to whip her head around at him. His face held no emotion, but she could see it in his eyes. He feared that he had done something. Sakura put a hand to his cheek, causing him to look to her. She gave him a smile. I highly doubt that. Naruko's not the type to hold a grudge, and you know it. Sasuke stared into Sakura's eyes, looking for the truth, for the strength that he seemed to lack for the first time since his childhood. He didn't want to lose another precious person, especially by his own doing. And he did see that her gaze told no lies, nothing but solid conviction, a firm belief that there was some other reason behind their friend's absence. Sakura could feel some of the tension literally melt from him. She smiled and scooted closer, laying her head against his chest, him wrapping both arms around her. Naruko left for a personal reason, that I'm sure of. She's not angry with anyone but herself, at least that's what I believe," said Sakura as she snuggled into Sasuke. Sasuke raised an eyebrow at that and looked down at her. "Do you know something, Sakura?" She sighed and just shook her head. "Nothing for sure, but when we were looking around in her apartment, I found her diary." She looked at the ground, a small glimpse of shame flashing onto her face. "After reading a few entries, I got an impression." When she didn't continue, Sasuke asked, "An impression? Of what?" For a minute Sakura just watched the fire. When she did answer, she said it in a voice that was just a whisper, "Well, from what I read, she's in." "Hey there," a voice suddenly came from the forest, causing both ninja to jump and assume a combat stance, kunai at the ready. "Whoa there, no need for that." The voice came from an older gentleman that walked out from some of the trees. He carried a large pack on his back and was using a walking stick to steady himself. He held up his free hand in a friendly manner, palm forward. "Sorry for startling you folks. Just saw the fire and thought you might not mind letting me and my grandson warm ourselves for a bit." At the mention of the man's grandson, Sakura noticed the small boy clutching his grandfather's leg and hiding behind him. Both shinobi looked at each other and nodded, sensing no real threat from the two newcomers. Putting their weapons away, Sakura smiled at the older man. "Sure, you're welcome to share the fire with us, more the merrier, right?" The older man nodded and smiled. "Indeed, indeed. Come hun, thank the nice couple," he said, putting a hand behind the young lad, bring him forward. The boy just stood there for a moment before bowing, then dashing back behind his grandfather. I apologize, he's a bit on the shy side. My name is Truzu, and this is my grandson Hun, said the old man scratching the back of his head. Sakura and Sasuke sat back down next to each other while Sakura waved for them to join them. It's okay. Kids will be kids after all. Oh, I'm Sakura and this is Sasuke. Truzu came forward and sat down with the young Hun hopping onto his lap. Oh, that they are. Sometime I don't think you will ever change, he said with a chuckle. But I'm sure a happy couple like yourselves know all about it, huh? Got a bunch of rugrats tucked away somewhere? He asked. Sasuke just coughed, while Sakura blushed so red that her face matched her hair. No, we don't have any kids. Well, not yet anyways. Truzu just gave the two of them a humble smile. He reached forward to warm his hands. So what brings you two out this way, traveling the world perhaps? The looks on Sasuke's and Sakura's face turned plain and distant, as if searching for an answer. Old Truzu took note of this. I see. Not a pleasant trip then. Both shinobi nodded. We're looking for a friend of ours. Sakura searched for the right words, went missing a few weeks back. We've been searching since. The old man looked over the two with concern. You must really care for your friend, if you're out here looking for her. This time it was Sasuke who answered, care for her isn't even close. She has done so much for us, for me, for our village, sacrificed, suffered, struggled, and in the end she prevailed, saving everyone. She is a person we cannot do without, and we owe her more than can ever be repaid. She left to fight a struggle on her own, without telling anyone. Sasuke clenched his fists and stared into the old man's eyes. She is irreplaceable, and if she needs help, we are damn well going to be there by her side. Sakura was moved by his words, feeling the exact same way. Naruko was so much more than just a friend, a best friend. She was truly an irreplaceable person from their lives, that without her, well, let's just say it was like taking the sun from the sky. Truzu watched Sasuke's eyes, studying them. That is truly something. Your strength and faith in this friend just amazes me, lad. And your eyes, so honest. I've only seen eyes honest like that once before. Funny, didn't think I'd see anyone with eyes like that again so soon. The old man hunched down hugging his sleeping grandson. Truly amazing. So Truzu, what are you doing out here? It's a bit far from the main road, isn't it? Asked Sakura, throwing some more branches onto the fire. Oh, we're headed to my son's village near the land of waves. He gave a light chuckle. We got lost a while ago while gathering some herbs, so we wandered around for a bit till we found a cave to take shelter in. That was 2 nights ago, during the rainstorm. Oh, yay, we were in the east part of the forest that night. We got soaked till we found this large tree to stay under. Sakura said, we should have done that too. Truzu said, the cave was at the base of a ridge and the water suddenly flooded into the cave, forcing us farther into the cave. As we got deeper the walls began to crumple, and when I thought we were done for, a young lass came from the cave's depths and saved us. Both shinobi became increasingly interested. She picked both of us up, threw us onto her back and ran through the crumpling cave. She was incredible, dodging and jumping over and under, all the while carrying us. We were almost out. We could see the entrance, but just as we were reaching it, it caved in. I thought we were done for, but the young lady just kept heading for the entrance. As we got closer, her did something with her hands. Truzu stuck out 2 fingers and made a cross with his other fingers to demonstrate. Next thing I knew, there were 2 of her and they made this bright blue ball into her hand. Then the one disappeared and she just charged forward, smashing the ball into the wall. There was a great explosion, and the next thing I knew we were outside. After that she stuck around to make sure we okay, gave me directions to the nearby village, then she left. Quiet the tale, huh? Truzu laughed, but when no one joined in his laughter he looked to the 2 shinobi. The looks on their faces were of utter shock, as if they couldn't believe it. Yes, I went there, and in a way they truly couldn't. Sasuke recovered first and shot to his feet, startling Truzu. What did she look like? Did you get her name? What way did she go? Truzu just stared at Sasuke, and then Sakura then too joined in. Please, which way did she go? Did she tell you anything? Her eyes held something that hadn't been there in weeks. Hope? Truzu looked back and forth between the two. Then slowly it dawned on him. She's your friend, the one you're looking for. Sakura nodded while Sasuke said, sound like her, exactly like her. Truzu scratched at his head. Well, we didn't stay with her long, and in all truth I was a bit shaken up. She was a lovely young lady with long blonde hair pulled into 2 ponytails. And she had blue eyes. As for her name I didn't get it, and I didn't ask where she was headed," he said sheepishly. Both Sasuke's and Sakura's heads dropped in disappointment. Sasuke just uttered, "Damn. We were this close to her." Sakura whispered, looking down at the dirt. The camp was silent, the crackle of the fire being the only sound. Even the forest seemed to grow quiet. "Naruko." Both shinobis' heads shot up, looking to the speaker. Truzu looked down at his grandson, who was now awake and watching the two from his grandfather's lap. What did you just say?" asked Sakura. The boy just looked back and forth between Sasuke and Sakura. Her name was Naruko. "Is that your friend?" asked the boy, tilting his head to the side a little. A smile crept across Sasuke's lips. "Yes, that's her. By chance do you know where she was headed?" "Well, she said she was just traveling around," said young Hun. Sakura stood up and walked over the young one. "Please, anything she said might help," she pleaded, and she kneeled down next the boy. Hun thought about it for a minute. She said the springs near the hidden waterfall village sounded like a great place to relieve stress. "Does that help?" Sakura grinned so big that it rivaled Naruko's famous grin. "It does." The next thing they knew, Sakura grabbed Hun and hugged him, spinning him round and round. "It does. It does. It does. It does. It does. It does," she repeated as she spun the child. Sasuke just smirked at the sight while Truzu laughed a belly laugh. Hun just yelled, "I am gonna be sick." 3 days later in the village Gonguko. The crisp night air crept in through the open window on the inn window and glided over the bed that a sleeping Naruko currently occupied. She shivered slightly at the cool air and slowly opened her eyes. Rolling over, she looked to the window and the sky high above. Sliding out of bed, she went and sat in the chair next to the window. The sky was clear tonight. You could see the stars as if you could reach out and grab them. Naruko smiled. She liked clear skies. The wind outside picked up a bit and blew another breeze into the room. As the wind caressed her skin, Naruko shivered. "Achoo!" She rubbed her nose. "That's what you get, kid, for sleeping in only undergarments." "Oh, shut it, Kurama," she said with a smirk. Leaning against the window, she leaned her head on her hand and looked out at the town. It was still early night, people still walking around, but Naruko was a little surprised at how many were still out and about. That's when she noticed that in the eastern part of the village there were a lot of lights. "Oh yeah," Naruko said as she remembered seeing some posters about a festival the next few days. Getting up, she went over to her bag and pulled out her orange outfit. "What ya say, Kurama? Wanna go out for a night on the town? Better than just sitting around here." Naruko smiled as she finished getting dressed, then turned and dashed out the window. She landed on the roof of the building on the other side of the street and made her way to the festival lights. As she neared, she noticed the crowds getting bigger and bigger. "Whoa, look at all those people. I guess this is a pretty big deal around here," she said as she hopped down into the crowd, startling a few folks. She waved an apology, then ran off into the crowds. There were stands and stages, and everyone was dressed up in kimonos. As Naruko walked on, she saw a stand that rented out kimonos. "Yay!" She smiled as she ran to the stand. "Hello, miss. Care to rent out a dress?" asked a little lady sitting on the stand bench. "You betcha," Naruko said, looking around. After a moment, she saw the perfect one. It was a wild kimono with a tailed fox on it. The fox curled around the lower half as red leaf patterns scattered across the rest of the kimono. "I'd like that one," she said, pointing. The lady looked at the kimono and an uneasy look crossed her face. Young lady, you do know what that is, right?" Naruko looked at her like she had gone batty. "A kimono?" "Yes, but the pattern is that of a demon fox, not very festive," she said quietly. Naruko got the hint then, and just hated it. She stared down at the lady and glared at her. "Whatever, I want that one. The demon in that pattern happens to be one hell of a character. Even if you don't know he's a great guy. I want that one, now." The lady just nodded and grabbed the kimono, then led Naruko to a changing room. Naruko huffed as soon as she left. "Hag," she said under her breath. "Kind words from you, kid. I might even blush." At that, Naruko really did blush. "Oh hush, Kurama. I just spoke the truth." Naruko continued to put the kimono on. "You are great. I count you as one of my best friends, probably my closest. You certainly know me the best." And what she said just ticked me off. "Kit, that means a lot to me, and thanks." Naruko just smiled. Hey, no need for that, Kurama. We look out for each other, we're together no matter what, and I don't think I ever would change that. At that, Naruko finished getting ready, packed her clothes into a small bag, tossed it over her shoulder and headed out. After paying the hag, Naruko looked around for the best-looking stand in sight. After a moment of searching, she found a knife-throwing stand, and a wicked grin crossed Naruko's face. Low kit, very low. Kurama said with a chuckle. Well, what else was all the training for? She said with huff and smiled, then made her way to the stand. Standing around the stand was a couple of kids, 2 boys and 1 girl. The 2 boys were playing the game while the girl was cheering them on. One boy had brown hair and was grinning like a fool. The other was a redhead and seemed like her was bordered but still played. The young girl had short black hair pulled back into a small ponytail. She was jumping up and down cheering for the 2. You can do it. Go, 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 she said with a laugh. Both boys took aim and threw the knives. Neither of them hit the mark. The brown head pouted while the redhead just shrugged his shoulders. The girl just smiled. Maybe next time? I'll get them for us next time for sure, said the brown head as they started to head off. Naruko ran up the group. Hey there guys, what were you trying to get? The kids looked at her, then at each other before the redhead pointed back at the stand. We wanted the friend stones. Naruko looked to where the boy was pointing and saw that one of the top prizes were necklaces with stones, and on the stones was the kanji for friendship. Smiling, Naruko looked back down at the kids. Want one each to get them for you? The littler girl's face lit up while both boys smiled and nodded. Naruko grinned and walked over to the stand owner. 3 marks please, she said, handing him a few coins. The man slid the coins over and placed 3 knives on the table. Naruko took them and held all 3 in her hand, pointing at the targets. The children were silent, and even the one watched as he saw she meant to throw all 3 at once. Taking a deep breath, she focused on the targets, the center, the sweet spot. Naruko smirked, pulled back and threw the knives. To Naruko, the second she threw those knives, the world seemed to slow down and go dead silent. She watched as the knives spun in the air, round and round till they met the board. Kunk, kunk, kunk. Winner, 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 yelled the stand man, ringing his bell. Many people in the crowd clapped or whooped for her. Naruko just smiled and waved at them. The children were jumping up and down with each other. Well, miss, that was something. Which prizes would you like? Asked the standkeeper. Naruko pointed at the friend stones. 3 of those please. He looked at the stone. Sure you want those? There are better prizes? Naruko looked down at the kids, which all of them nodded, looking back to the keeper with a smile. Yep, those please. Getting up, the keeper went into the back and they came back with 3 stone necklaces. He handed them to Naruko. They were red, blue, and orange. Naruko turned the children. So who gets which color? She asked, grinning down at the kids. Orange, orange, yelled the little girl, jumping up at Naruko, smiling and laughing. Naruko put the necklace around her head. She held the stone up between her thumb and forefinger, then grinned up at Naruko. Naruko grinned back, then turned to the boys. I'll take the red one, said the lad with red hair. After Naruko slipped it around his head, he held it in both his hands as he studied it. Thanks, he murmured. Leaves me with blue. Best color should go to me anyways, said the last boy as he put his hands on his hips and puffed out his chest in triumph. Naruko laughed as she placed the necklace on him. All 3 kids then looked up and in sync. Thank you, one each. As they held up the stones for her to see, she patted their heads and smiled down at them. No problem, kiddies. Now why don't you run off and enjoy the festival? As she turned to go, she felt a tug at her kimono. Looking back, she found all 3 of them looking up at her. Come play with us, one each, please. Naruko could only smile at the request and nodded. The children led the way into the festival, weaving in and out of the crowd as they went from stand to stand. The kids tried a few other games, which Naruko got to laugh at when they competed against each other. After a few games, which included goldfish scooping and water balloon yo-yos, the kids ran off to a cotton candy stand. Naruko's eyes got big with wonder and she drooled a little, making her look far more childish. The kids got a big laugh at that. Walking down the street, Naruko noticed a mask stand and saw some ninja masks. A small smile crept onto her face as she remembered the village, but soon was brought back to reality as the kids dragged her off to stage with a fire dancer. The lady made the fire look like it was dancing around her, as if the fire itself was her partner. Naruko was mesmerized, but then looked down at the kids. Their eyes became as big as plates and Naruko couldn't hold in her laughter. As she recovered from laughing, she notices something a ways back down the street. There were two masked figures. Normally that wouldn't be unusual at a festival, but normal folks weren't armed, or following her. Wanting to test the theory, Naruko took the kids to another performance stage with a couple of jugglers. Not interested in the show, Naruko kept a discreet eye on the masked couple. Yep, they were still there. Naruko sighed. Motioning for the kids to follow her, she led them to a bench nearby and sat them down. Well guys, it's been fun, but one each's got to get going. The kids all pouted. Hey now, no sad faces. Here, put your hands out. They did, and as they did she dropped some coin into them, making the kids gasp in shock at how much she gave them. Now I want you to find the best seats in the house for the firework and enjoy, okay? There's nothing better than watching fireworks with friends. The two boys nodded, but the little girl just looked at Naruko with a questioning look. Are you going to watch the fireworks with your friends, One-ichan? Taken aback a little, Naruko thought about the question. She remembered her times back in the village and all the fireworks they watched as kids. Though it was a happy, though her mind went back to the two masked individuals. You bet. I got a meeting place already set with them, so I had to go meet up with them. Naruko said, giving them a thumbs up. The three kids smiled, then hopped up to run off, but before they left they all gave Naruko a group hug. Naruko was surprised to say the least, but returned the hug, then shooed them off to have fun. They all laughed as they made their way down the street and turned down one on the left. Naruko watched as the masked two passed by the street and continued toward her. Satisfied, Naruko started making her way out of the festival and headed toward the forest north of the village. As she passed the last of the stands and onto the empty street of the village, Naruko took a twirl as if she were dancing to get a quick look behind her. Though they were hidden, she noticed them. They were still following. Well, festivals are nice, but a good throwdown isn't so bad either. Kurama chuckled. Naruko just laughed at Kurama's humor. I was enjoying my time with the kids though. To each his own. Naruko continued to walk through the town streets, slowly but surely making her way to the outside gates. She was a little surprised that they hadn't tried anything yet. There was no one around and it was getting darker and darker the farther she got from the festival. Soon she passed over a small bridge and onto a grassy path, leading out of the village and for the nearby forest. After walking on the path for a while, Naruko found herself in a meadow area, a few trees here and there, and all around her long grass swayed with the wind. Feeling this was far enough, she turned to her followers. Putting one hand on her hip and the other hanging lightly at her side, she yelled out to the two, "Yo jackasses! I see you." The two masked people came out from behind a tree and walked a bit closer. Finally stopping, they just stared at her. Naruko just stared back, and stared. A tick mark popped on Naruko's head. Hey! Don't just stand there, fools. If you're here to rob me, try, or whatever, I don't care. You already ruined my night. She said, rubbing the back of her head. Suddenly the two pulled out knives and rushed for her. Naruko was instantly serious and focused on the weapons. Not wanting this to take too long, she rushed forward and in a flash was behind them. They turned to attack but noticed something was off. Naruko was twirling the knives around in her hand. She had a goofy grin and just balanced on her heels. The one goon looked back and forth between her and his hand. Yeah, not the brightest one on the corner. The other one though charged forward, swinging punch after punch. Naruko ducked and hopped to dodge each attack. If she was going to fight, might as well get a little exercise. That when thing one finally decided to join in and throw a punch, she saw it coming and flipped over the other thug, causing the big one to punch the other, breaking the mask. Naruko looked to see, well, one hell of a ugly face under the broken mask. Couching down while looking at some grass, Naruko addressed the thugs. You know, if you don't make this at least a little challenging, I'm gonna go back to the festival. Those goldfish are harder to deal with than you two. Both thugs rushed forward angry. Naruko just sighed and stood up, waiting for them to reach her. Once they were close, she zipped in behind them and knocked them out. They slumped to the ground out cold. Naruko clapped her hands, being done, and turned to head back to the village. That's when her eyes saw two more figures on the path. But unlike the thugs, Naruko recognized these two, and it froze her solid for a second. In a shaky voice, Naruko said the only thing that came to mind. Hey there, Sasuke, Sakura. Hey there, Sasuke, Sakura. Naruko said in a strained voice. Her feet frozen to the spot she stood, her body still as a statue, and a cold sweat dripping down her cheek. Sasuke and Sakura stood next to each other a ways down from Naruko, the village to their backs. They wore their Junin gear along with cloaks. Naruko couldn't help but notice they were armed, not a good sign. "Hey there, that's really the best thing you could come up with?" Sakura growled with an angry expression. Naruko was really glad she was way over there, out of punching distance. Sasuke stood next to her, obviously waiting to say something, clenching his fists. Naruko put her one hand behind her head and gave an unconvincing smile. Yo, what up guys? What brings you to these necks of the woods?" she shouted, suddenly shooting her hand into the air to give them a wave and grin. "Stop goofing off," Sasuke shouted at her, causing Naruko to flinch. She bit her lower lip trying to think of something to say. Nothing really came to mind. "What brings us here? What the hell do you think, Naruko? Did you really think we wouldn't come after you?" Sakura yelled, stomping her foot at the last question. Sasuke just nodded, as if to hold himself back from yelling more. "Didn't you guys get my letters? I said I'd be back, eventually." Naruko said the last word quietly, but Sasuke still caught it. "Eventually? Naruko, you shouldn't have left in the first place. Or at least have the guts to tell us face to face. Everyone's worried, we're worried. You leave suddenly, with barely a goodbye, saying you may be gone for years. You can't tell me you really thought that no one would come looking for you," Sasuke said, still clenching his fist. Even though his words were calm, Naruko could tell he was angry. "Exactly, come home Naruko, talk to us. If you're in trouble we'll help, but don't just leave us," Sakura added, her eyes getting a little watery. Naruko looked down at the ground and shuffled at the dirt with her foot. Naruko sighed. "Look guys, I didn't mean for it to seem like I don't care, I do." She paused to look back up at them. "It means a lot to me that you came looking for me. I just felt this would be a better way of dealing with things. I knew someone would come looking for me, was hoping it wouldn't be you, but, look, I just can't go home." "Why?" both shinobi yelled down to her. Naruko could only stare at them. "Why Naruko? You at least owe us that much," Sasuke said, giving Naruko a concerned look. Sakura nodded. "I had to deal with some personal issues, okay. I can't do it back at the village, and I don't know how long it will take to take care of." She hoped it would satisfy them, but doubted it would. She was right. Sasuke sighed and tapped Sakura's shoulder once. She nodded and started to put on her gloves. Naruko got the message too. Sasuke looked hard at Naruko. "Do you remember what you told me on the day I left the village all those years ago?" Memories from that day came flooding into her mind. The valley, the water, the fight, God, that fight, and the words she had spoken. The words she could never forget no matter how hard she tried. Naruko nodded. "Of course I remember." She looked down and gave a light chuckle. "How could I forget? I told you I'd bring you back home even if it meant I had to break every bone in your body and drag you back." Still looking at the ground, she shook her head. "This isn't the same, Sasuke. I'm not leaving for good, I promise I'll come back. I need to." "What do you need to do? Unless you can give us a good reason for leaving." Sasuke's eyes turned red as he activated his Sharingan. "We are going to take you back here and now." Sakura took a step forward, and though her eyes had worry in them, she had a hard, stern look on her face. "Naru, this isn't like you. You're reckless and forgetful, but never secretive and cowardly. What are you hiding from us?" The question brought Naruko's head shooting up to look at the pink-haired kunoichi. She had a look of shock, almost fright on her face. Thoughts ran through her head, like, did they know? Had Kakashi told them? She took a deep breath. No, he wasn't the type to tell, and even he didn't know the whole truth. No one did, no one but her and Kurama. Naruko leaned back, putting all her weight on one leg, and looked to the stars. "Sakura, everyone has a secret, even me. And when you have to face it, or can't, you have to take action. Mine was this. A journey." So quiet Sakura barely heard it. She added, "Away from everything." Sakura watched as Naruko looked back at them. Her eyes had changed from that of a comrade to that of an enemy, cold, hard, and determined. The wind picked up and blew through the trio. Sasuke sighed and came to stand next to Sakura. "There's nothing we can say to change your mind?" he asked. Naruko didn't look away. She didn't hesitate. She just smiled warmly at them. "Sorry guys, I just can't, not willingly." Sakura gritted her teeth and got into her fighting stance. Sasuke pulled out a kunai and did the same. Naruko studied them for a moment, and then she too got into a fighting stance. No one moved, no one breathed. Even the wind had died down as if holding a breath waiting to see what would happen. That's when a raindrop fell from the sky and to anyone else would not have been noticed, but there were 3 legendary shinobi here. They did notice and when it hit the ground, launched into action. Sasuke and Sakura charged at Naruko with blinding speed, splitting up and coming at her from different sides. Not taking her eyes off of them, Naruko made her hand size so fast even Sasuke's Sharingan saw it as a blur. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Naruko said as the whole area filled with puffs of smoke. Sasuke and Sakura didn't stop their charge. As the smoke cleared, they saw hundreds of Narukos standing there ready for a fight. They all rushed forward, meeting the 2 shinobi head-on. Ducking and dodging, Sasuke kicked and punched every clone he went past. Sakura hit one clone, sending it flying into the group of clones, making many of them disappear. After moving forward more, Sakura started to get surrounded by clones, all moving to stop her from advancing. She gave a small smirk and raised her fist into the air and then hit the ground, hard. The ground beneath her cracked and splintered, causing many clones to fall and poof away. Jumping away, she moved on. In the air she saw Sasuke look to her and nod. She got the message. As she reached the ground she punched it again, creating a large crack in the ground that she proceeded to take cover behind. Once he was sure Sakura was out of the way, Sasuke flew though his hand size. Kaden Gokaku no Jutsu. Sasuke sent the giant fireball forward into the crowd of clones. The fireball flew forward, dispersing many of the clones. When it finally died down, there were only a few clones left. Sasuke and Sakura continued their rush, but then Sasuke stopped. Skidding to a halt, Sakura looked back to him. "What is it?" "TCH, she got me that time," he said. Sakura looked to him with a confused look. He looked back to the remaining 10 Narukos. They were all just waiting for the 2 of them to come at them. Sasuke looked to the forest to the north. "She used the clones as a distraction. She's not here." Sakura looked back to the clones, startled. "What?" "She ran off." She stomped her foot. Then to the clones, "She went to the forest, right? Where is she headed?" All the clones relaxed and just smiled at Sakura. Then at the same time they all said, "Sorry, gotta run." Then they all vanished in a puff of smoke. Sasuke started for the forest, looking for any sign of which way Naruko may have gone, Sakura close behind. As they rushed into the forest, Sasuke summoned a hawk. "Fly high and look for any sign of Naruko." The hawk flew off. They stopped and waited for a moment before the hawk came back. It flew past Sasuke and headed deeper into the woods. "He's got something," Sasuke said, following after the hawk. As they followed the hawk, Sakura noticed the festive sandals that Naruko had been wearing on the ground below them. They were on the right track. Looking at Sasuke, Sakura had an inner debate with herself. She had an idea of why Naruko might have left, but she wasn't 100% positive. From what she had read, it was only a hunch, and in truth she wasn't sure how, if it were true, she felt about the situation. "Sasuke," she said. He looked over his shoulder at her. I might know why she left," she said. That got Sasuke to stop and look at her, obviously waiting for more. Sakura just looked at him, and then sighed. "Look, I'm not sure that I'm right. It's just that what I read in her diary, it suggests at what she's feeling." When she didn't say anything, "Sakura, if you think it's relevant then tell me. I know you don't want to make assumptions, but we don't have much to begin with here." She nodded. "All right. Well, from what I read I think she is somewhere deeper in the forest." Ha ha ha, I know I'm teasing you with not saying it out and out, but it's just too much fun now XP. Naruko jumped from branch to branch, looking over her shoulder for any sign that Sasuke and Sakura were on her trail. It didn't seem like they were there. She releases a breath that she didn't realize she had been holding. Pushing on, she increased her speed, just in case. She knew that they wouldn't give up that easily, but if she can get ahead a bit she can lose them. Making her hand signs, she creates 3 more clones. All 4 of them are jumping along the branching. When the main Naruko nods, the clones nod and all head off in different directions. Naruko continues on, every once in a while looking over her shoulder. She gets this feeling in her gut. Uncertainty. What was it? She really didn't know. She smiles a bit. No, that was a lie, she knew. She had been happy to see them. It had hurt to leave, again. "Damn," she said through gritted teeth. "I know we've talked about this before, Kit, but are you really sure this is the way you want things?" She shook her head. "Of course it's not the way I want things, Kurama. It's just the way things have to be." The way it has to be, huh? I don't agree. You haven't even tried to tell them. I may not be the best advisor there is in the matter, but no, it has to be this way. Any other way would ruin me, I think, and if I got what I wanted, she laughed a single laugh, it would just be too selfish of me. Kit, you have every right to be a little selfish. Naruko shook her head again, and when she did, she noticed something. A building. She made her way over to it. It was an old ruined shrine, with stone steps and everything. There was even a well for wishes. Making her way over to the well, Naruko smiled. She remembered the first time she realized, God, it had been so long ago. As she reached the well, she let her hand fall to the stone and skim across the rough surface. It had been when Sasuke had left, when she made that promise to Sakura, a promise to herself. She would never tell anyone, only Kurama knew because he shared her mind and body with her. She kneeled down and looked into the well. She saw nothing but darkness, couldn't even see the bottom. She smiled, it was the same with her, she saw no end to this. One day they would know, she knew that, but right now she just couldn't deal with it. With them knowing, or rather their reaction. That was truly only half of it now, but it was still the main reason, the main fear. She looked to the trees around the shrine, and then up to the sky, it all seemed to close in on her. Kid, it's alright Kurama, I'll be fine, I just have to keep moving, if I do that it won't catch up, I won't have to face it. She didn't move though, she just kept staring into that well. Is that really what you believe? Said a voice from behind her, making her jump. Still kneeling next to the well, she looked over her shoulder to see Sasuke and Sakura standing by the stone steps. Sasuke stood closer, waiting for an answer to his question. Naruko sighed as she stood up and brushed the dirt off her kimono. You caught up quick, wasn't expecting you to find me that fast. For a moment they didn't say anything, just stared at Naruko with a puzzled look. It's been 2 hours, Sasuke finally said. Naruko didn't understand. What do you mean? You've been staring into the well for a few hours there, Kit. The news shocked Naruko. Had she been so caught up in her thoughts that she let time slip by? She laughed loudly, causing both Sasuke and Sakura to become worried, and it showed. Sakura started. I'm sorry about that, guys, I was lost in thought, even more than normal. Man, really losing my touch, huh? She said as she leaned back and sat on the edge of the well. Enough, Naruko, just tell us why you left the village. We want to know, we want to help. Let us, Sasuke pleaded. Naruko watched the two of them as they walked closer but stopped about 6 feet away. They waited for her to talk to them. Naruko looked up to the sky. It was cloudy now with signs of rain coming. She wanted it to rain, then maybe she could cry at the irony of it all, at her own stupidity. But she knew she wasn't that lucky. Sorry Sasuke, but my answer is the same, and this time you won't catch me. She said as a poof of smoke burst in the trees, startling Sasuke and Sakura. When Naruko looked back at them, she had frog eyes and orange around her eyes. Both Sasuke and Sakura jumped back at this. What sage mode? Sakura yelled. Standing up, Naruko nodded. Yay. I had a couple clone head out and meditate just in case. Now sorry, but I had to be going. She said as she was about to jump away. That's when Sakura pushed past Sasuke and yelled, I know. This made Naruko stop and stare at Sakura, a fear growing in her gut. You know? Know what? Sakura fidgeted a little before Sasuke put a hand on her shoulder and nodded to her. She nodded back and took a deep breath, then looked to Naruko. Before we headed out from the village, we stopped at your place to look for any sign of where you were headed. We didn't find anything about where you were going, but I did find your diary. Sakura let the information sink in. Naruko had a cold sweat running down her neck. She knew her secret wasn't in it per se, but anyone with a brain would be able to get a hint. Sakura had a brain, it wouldn't be hard for her to. Naruko gulped. You didn't read it, did you? Naruko hoped, she prayed, she begged Kami, the devil, anything, that she didn't read it. Sakura nodded. Naruko broke. I wouldn't under normal circumstance, Naru, but we needed to find you. From what I read, I'm pretty sure I got you reason for leaving. No. Naruko started. She started quiet, but it grew and grew into a scream, and she clutched her head, shaking it back and forth. You can't. No, you can't. No. Naruko. Stop. It's okay. Please stop. Sakura said, inching closer, Sasuke right behind him. They could see tears running down her face as she thrashed about, screaming. Then she let out one last mighty roar, one filled with chakra that shook the forest around them. making the two shinobi freeze in place. Naruko went slack as her arms lay lifelessly, her back bent backward, her face looking to the sky. Sasuke and Sakura couldn't see her face. For what seemed like hours but was really only a moment, everything was silent. Then quickly Naruko bent forward and put one hand to her face, the other on her hip. Her hand covered her nose and eyes as she sighed. Naruko, both Sasuke and Sakura called to her. "Great, now look what you two have done," Naruko said, but her voice was strange, it had a roughness overlapping her normal voice. She stood straight and took her hand away from her face. Both Sasuke and Sakura gasped. Naruko's eyes were no longer frog-like with orange or her beautiful sky blue. No, they were demon-red silted eyes filled with anger and hate. "Naruko?" Sakura asked. "No, that's not her," said Sasuke. "With those eyes I guess you can still see me, Uchiha." "That's right, I'm not Naruko, name's Kurama, and thanks to you two, she's gone into hiding, to a place I can't even get to," said Kurama from Naruko's body. "Nice going." Naruko stood defiantly, her arms crossed over chest, an angry look on her face, her eyes a bright demon red. She stared down Sasuke and Sakura standing a few feet away, very uneasy at the new development. "This was not Naruko. You just had to open your mouth, didn't you, Pinky?" Kurama said with a sigh. He didn't take his eyes off the two shinobi. He knew that this could have happened but really had hoped it wouldn't. He needed to try and find Naruko, but at the same time if he did that then they would be able to take her body away without a struggle. And even if he felt this was foolish, he respected her independence. He let some of his chakra flare. The power pushed a force out, making the trees shake and leaves blew everywhere. The shrine itself shook and parts fell away. Sakura flinched but stood determined. Sasuke just grimaced. "You're the Nine Tails." It wasn't a question. "Where is Naruko?" Sasuke asked, almost afraid of the answer. Kurama waited, and then let his chakra die down. "She's hiding." He looked down to Naruko's chest, then with his thumb pointed to the center of her chest. "She's hiding deep within." "What do you mean?" Sakura asked, though she did have some idea. Kurama looked up to her and sneered. A speck of fear crossed Sakura's face, but she soon replaced it with a firm look. "Tell us." Growling lightly. "You already know that everyone has a mindscape." Both nodded. "Well, after your wonderful tactic she had a, what do you humans call it, a meltdown," Kurama said while tapping his chin. "Thanks to that her spirit and personality literally have closed off. If I had time I could try to find her, but Naruko has a vast scape that has only grown larger over the years." Sakura looked a little confused. "Why can't you go find her?" "It would leave her body defenseless." Kurama stretched his arms above his head. "We would watch over her," Sasuke said. This made Kurama freeze in the middle of his stretch. Slowly he lowered his arms and gave Sasuke a look that screamed murder. Though his voice was calm, you could feel the malice in his tone. "You are an Uchiha, and at the moment the enemy of my host." "We are not her enemy," Sakura screamed. Kurama turned to her. "You are not an enemy? Was it not you two who said you would take her back even if it meant by force? Was it not you that chased Naruko to this place and then proceed to tell her you knew? You told her you knew, knowing that she was hiding it. She gave me no choice, she keeps running. She can talk to us, why won't she?" "Why?" Sakura yelled, tears starting to form in her eyes. Kurama sighed, then put one hand on his hip and drooped his head down. "I agree that she is being foolish here. She would do well to talk to you too." He looked to Sasuke. "Even you Uchiha, I don't like your clan, probably never will. But you're her friend, that is clear. However, I will not do something that goes against her choice, no matter how foolish. I owe her that much at least." Sasuke's eyes widened in shock at the warmth in Kurama's voice. He truly loved the girl. He had always assumed that the fox hated Naruko. Even after the war he knew that they were on better terms, but he never thought that he would hear that kind of tenderness coming from the fox. Sasuke took a step forward, making Kurama narrow his gaze, watching for an attack. "Please let me try finding her. Let me try talking to her one more time. Please," Sasuke begged as he fell to his knees and bowed before the fox Naruko. Both Sakura and Kurama were beyond shocked. Here was Sasuke Uchiha, a proud individual that barely ever begged for anything on his hands and knees. Sakura nodded and followed suit. "Please, we just want her to talk to us, to come home." A hidden leaf village without Naruko. is like a sky without a sun. Kurama eyed them for a moment before laughing lightly, peeved. I truly have no words for this moment. Sakura and Sasuke looked back up at Kurama, who was now smiling. I like how you bow before me, Uchiha. I know it's for her, but still. Kurama turned serious again. I'll let you try finding her, but you both are going. I still won't leave her body unguarded, even for you two. I can't really know where she has gone, only that it is deep inside, even farther than my old cell that was supposed to be in the deepest depth of her soul. Knowing that you may very well get lost and never return, will you still go? Both Sakura and Sasuke nodded without looking at each other and without hesitation. HMPT, very well. Kurama scoffed. Then his eyes went wide and glowed that demon red. Both Sasuke and Sakura stared into those eyes. Their world then went dark and they fell into an endless sea of nothingness. Naruko's mindscape. Drip, 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 drip. Sasuke's head was screaming at him. He groaned as he reached for his head. He was laying in shallow water and slowly stood up, stumbling a little as he did. Looking around, he saw an endless hallway with piping and wires all around. It was dark and damp. The water was ankle deep and it had a sense of hollowness. He remembered being here once before, when Naruko and Sakura had come for him at Orochimaru's. He heard a groan behind him, making his head snap in the direction. Sakura was sitting on the ground, her head in her hands as she shook back and forth. Sasuke rushed to her side. Sakura, you okay? He asked as he reached her and put a hand on her shoulder. She lowered one of her hands to look at him and nodded. Yeah, just got a killer migraine. Never really get used to entering another person's mind, let alone being pulled in. He nodded at her understanding. Only reason it was easy for him was his Sharingan. He waited for her to shake it off, then she stood and got her bearings. This is Naruko's mind? She asked. Just the old jail, really. They heard a voice say from behind them. They turned to look down a dark hallway. Slowly a man in a red kimono with long red hair, piercing red eyes, and a katana on his side came forth. Sasuke stood in front of Sakura. Fox? The man sneered. I do have a name, boy, Kurama. Kurama then. Sasuke looked back down the many halls that surrounded them. She's hiding in here somewhere? Kurama shook his head. No, she went into a deeper part of herself. This was just the lowest part one could bring you. He turned and looked down the hall he had come from. Come, the entrance to the depths is this way. He started walking, not waiting to see if they would follow. They did. As they followed, they noticed how it all looked alike, the same, and endless. The cement walls had a sickly green tint and the water was cold. Is this really her mind? Sakura asked, a hand over her heart clenched. Kurama didn't stop or look back. This is more like the add-on to the oldest parts of her soul. Sakura raised her eyebrow in question. Kurama sighed. The oldest part of her soul was my cell that I was held in for so long. These halls were built around it as she grew. They represent her early childhood. Cold, dark, and empty. An endless labyrinth filled with tears that will never dry, forever locked away and hidden away where no one can find them. Sasuke and Sakura had grim looks. They knew she had a hard childhood and that she never really talked about it, but this was hard to swallow. Sakura looked around and could feel a heave weight in her chest being added to. All this time and she had never really known how Naruko had felt. She felt the sting of tears again and cursed internally. She was not going to cry. She forced the tears back down. Sasuke, though looking calm, was raging internally. He above all others knew what a rough childhood was like. Like Naruko, he had a sadness that could never fully be extinguished, but it had become bearable thanks to Naruko and Sakura. Yet here they were in a place that showed how Naruko was still suffering greatly. He hated it. He hated his own weakness for not being there to help. Sakura moved closer to Kurama, walking right behind him to his right. Am I right? Did she leave because of? Kurama stopped, making her almost walk into him. Sasuke studied Kurama. He was lost in thought for a moment before he answered. You are half right in your assumption. Or more accurately, you have one part of the truth. Sasuke came forward. Will you tell us the other? Kurama shook his head, then looked to them. It is not my place. She wished it to be kept a secret, so I won't say anything. But I do hope for your success. As he finished, he looked back down the hall as a large doorway appeared with stone stairs going down. Sasuke and Sakura went past Kurama and looked down the stairs. They went forward for a bit, then began to circle, spiraling down like a tower staircase. I can go no further. Down there are many parts of her soul and her hiding place. I suggest not touching anything. I don't know how it will affect her. Good luck, Kurama said as he began to walk away. But he was stopped when someone grabbed his arm. Turning, he found Sakura standing there smiling at him. She let go, then bowed to him. Thank you, Kurama. Thank you for look after her. Sakura said. Sasuke came up beside her and bowed too. Just find her, please. The request shocked the two shinobi. Bringing their heads up, they found Kurama was already gone. Right. They shouted as they turned and headed down the stairs. Making their way down, Sakura noticed the walls. They were nothing but endless black. She felt if she reached out she would only find empty space. Looking over the side, she saw the stairs spiraling down in what looked like an endless descent. She looked back to Sasuke, who just continued on ahead, focused on his task. That's when she heard a laugh, a child's laugh. She turned to look for the source of the sound but found nothing. Sakura? Sasuke asked. She turned back to him. He had a raised eyebrow. Is something wrong? You didn't hear that? She asked, hoping it wasn't something just in her mind. When he shook his head, she started to worry, but then he got a look on his face like he had just seen a ghost. No, like he was looking at a ghost that was behind her. She almost had the sense to not look, but slowly she turned to look behind her. What she saw was well, for a lack of a better term, a window. No, she realized that wasn't right. It was windows. They were popping up all over the place. Behind them, next to them, further down the stairs, everywhere. But what truly shocked the shinobi was what were in those windows. They were all images from Naruko's life. The first one they saw had her and Master Jiraiya walking together down a dirt path in the woods. They were both eating a blue ice stick, laughing and joking with each other. Another showed all of Team 7 from when they had been a new team, eating at Ichiraku's. Naruko was huffing down a bowl as Sakura yelled at her. Kakashi was chuckling at the two as Sasuke just smirked, calling Naruko a dope. The next one that floated by was Naruko alone as a child. She was standing alone as the crowd avoided her and she glared back at them. Sakura watched as more and more appeared floating about aimlessly. These are her memories, from as far back as she can remember, I presume. Sasuke said as her turn to continue down the stairs, but as he did he came face another memory window, one that had one of him in it. The memory was of his and Naruko's fight in the final valley. Sasuke froze as the image played. Naruko fighting with all her might, jumping out of the water with a ferocity that put any animal to shame. Sasuke, uncaring and cruel as he belittled her and told her that no matter what, it was useless. It came to their final attack, Chidori versus Rasengan. Sasuke turned his head so he didn't see the clash. He knew how it ended. He clenched his fist in anger. Sakura walked up behind him and put a hand on his shoulder. He looked to her. She was watching the image and nodded for him to do so as well. He didn't want to but did anyways. What he saw shocked him. The image was completely white except for the two children in it, Sasuke and Naruko, both looking at each other and smiling like fools. Slowly they reached their hands out and linked two of their fingers, a sign of friendship. Sasuke let a slip of a laugh pass his lips. That fool, even after all that she was still loyal to our friendship. Sakura smiled. Of course, that's just Naruko, never lets go of a friend once she got in a hold. He frowned, looking back to the image as it changed once again, repeating the whole fight scene. I don't deserve that loyalty. She slapped his shoulder. Stop that. She forgave you, we all did. In the end you did right by us, you just stumbled on your way, that's all. He nodded to her as he passed through the image and continued down the stairs. All around them more images played, all from her past. Fighting pain, training with Kakashi, Sakura hitting her for some stupid comment, Sasuke smirking at her and arguing with her. Her fight with Kiba at the Chunin exams. Dinner with Iruka. Her and Side training against Captain Yamato. Her reunion with her father. Training with Master B. All three of them waiting at a bridge for Kakashi to show. A walk with Sakura. The war. The belt test. It went on and on as they made their way down. Sasuke then noticed one memory that for some reason seemed almost cracked. As it appeared, it seemed just like the other, but slowly a crack in the upper left corner started to make its way through the center of the image. Sasuke could barely make out the image. Naruko was sitting in what looked like a hospital bed looking out the window. She looked back as a doctor came in and started talking to her. There was no sound and the image was distorted enough that they couldn't read the doctor's lips, but slowly Naruko's expression changed from her happy self to a face of indifference. Sasuke and Sakura looked at each other. "You know what this is about?" asked Sasuke. Sakura just shook her head as she went back to watching. As the doctor left, Naruko didn't move. She just sat there frozen. She eventually slumped back into the pillow and, to the surprise of both shinobi watching, cried wide-eyed as she stared at the ceiling. "What the hell happened?" Sasuke almost yelled. "I don't know, I don't remember seeing her like that, and I can't tell when this was. She never told me anything about it either," Sakura said as she stared at the image, trying to get an idea of at least when this was. Sasuke grabbed her hand and pulled her along, making her stumble as he began to run down the stairs. "Enough of this, we need to find her and get the answers from her directly," he said between clenched teeth. He was starting to get frustrated. Sakura quickened to keep pace with him. After running for what seemed like hours, they finally saw an end to the stairs. It was a single door. The door was a old-looking wood with cracks and wear from age. The doorknob was a rusty red and looked like it had never been touched. They approached it with caution. Sasuke put his ear to it and listened but heard nothing from the other side. He nodded to Sakura, who got ready. He stood and placed his hand on the knob and slowly turned. It was not easy, as if the knob itself fought against the action of turning. Finishing, Sasuke pushed open the door. A blinding bright white light overtook the two of them. They had to shield their eyes from the shearing light. Slowly the light faded and they opened their eyes. Looking around, they found quite the interesting sight. "Sasuke, are these?" Sakura began to ask. Sasuke nodded. "Yeah, these places, they are." They stood in the green field of the third training ground, the three posts standing firmly in front of them, but connected to it there were two other places. Off where the river was supposed to be, well, there was a river, but it was much too large and there was an unfinished bridge built over it. The whole bridge was covered in a thick mist. Then off in the other direction was the Shinobi Academy. They slowly made their way past the posts when Sakura suddenly gasped, making Sasuke whip around to see Naruko, head down, hugging her knees and sitting by the middle post. "Naruko!" both shinobi yelled out. There, sitting in front of the middle post, was none other than Naruko Uzumaki, curled up hugging her legs, her head tucked low, hiding her face in her knees. She made no sound, no sign that she knew that Sasuke and Sakura were even there. She was dressed in her normal orange and black outfit. Her hair hung in her typical ponytails and rested on either side of her. "Naruko!" both Sasuke and Sakura said in surprise. They rushed to her. Sakura skidded to the ground, going to her knees, and put a hand to Naruko's shoulder. Still Naruko didn't move. Sasuke crouched down in front of the blonde and went to shake her, but before he could, "Sakura? Sasuke?" Naruko mumbled so softly that they almost had not heard her. Slowly Naruko lifted her head to look at the two, but when she did, they noticed her eyes were not their normal color, they were pale. She had a blank expression on her face as she slowly looked back and forth between the two. Slowly she tilted her head to the side and with a sad excuse for a smile said, "Hi." Sasuke's eyes narrowed and Sakura went wide-eyed. What was wrong with her? She was acting strange, as if she were an empty shell of her former self. Sakura spoke first. "Naruko, what are you doing here?" Naruko turned to look at Sakura and with the same blank expression simply stated, "I'm sitting." "That's not what I meant. I mean, why are you hiding down here? Can't you come back to reality and talk to us?" she asked as she moved to sit next to her and wrapped an arm around her shoulder. Shaking her head, Naruko looked to land around them. "No, it's better here." The edges of her lips curved upward to slowly form a small smile. Sakura looked to Sasuke with worry. He looked back to the land surrounding them. the training ground, the bridge and the academy. Turning back to Naruko, he flicked her forehead. Her head titled back a bit, then slowly moved back. She looked at him and said in a monotone voice, "Ow, Teme." He smirked at the insult. "What makes this place so great?" he asked, trying to figure her out. Naruko looked at the three areas and seemed to ponder the question. She just stared at each with a faraway look, as if looking into the past itself. Sasuke thought for a moment he saw something in her eyes, like a reflection, an image playing in her mind, but just as fast as it appeared, it vanished. Slowly Naruko started to stand. Sakura jumped up to help her. Once on her feet, she looked back to the post behind her. "They were the places that I first realized." "I realized," she trembled as she tried to finish her sentence. Sakura finished it for her. "First realized you had fallen in love." The statement caused Naruko to flinch and freeze in place. She wouldn't look back at the two, and when Sakura went to turn her around, Naruko faded from sight, vanishing instantly. Both Sasuke and Sakura jumped and looked around for her, but she was nowhere to be seen. "I never wanted anyone to know." Sasuke and Sakura turned to find her sitting on the right training post, her back to them. They calmed down and approached her slowly. "Why not?" Sasuke asked. Naruko didn't turn to look at them but still answer. "It was a complicated matter." Sakura smiled. "Love always is." Naruko shook her head. No, this was different. She looked over her shoulder at the two. They noticed her eyes were back to their sky blue color. Again she faded. Keeping calm this time, the two looked around, waiting for her to reappear again. When she didn't, Sasuke asked, "And what made it so different?" "Hey, I guess it was with who I was in love with, and that I knew it could never be." Naruko's voice came from behind the two once again. They turned to find her sitting on the left post, only this time cross-legged and sitting on it vertically. Her hands rested in her lap and she looked at the two. Sakura turned and moved toward her while Sasuke just watched. He gave a smirk. "Where was that never give up spirit of yours?" Naruko gave him a small smile back. "Everyone has something they can't face, everyone. This just happened to be mine, plus I was afraid." Sakura stopped. "Afraid of what?" Sasuke answered before Naruko had the chance. "Rejection." Naruko nodded. "A simple fear, I know, but I had lived with rejection for such a long time and had finally broken free. I didn't want it to happen again, not with." All three of them were silent for a minute, and then Sakura spoke up. "Sasuke?" Naruko looked at Sakura with a saddened expression. She stood up and faded. Sakura clenched her fists. She was getting annoyed with that. "The problem with that question, Sakura, is that you're not wrong. Then at the same time you are," Naruko said from a branch in the tree a few feet away. She was sitting on the branch but on the underside of it. Sasuke turned to her. "What does that mean?" Naruko sighed and rubbed the back of her head before looking to them again. "It means she is half right, half wrong." Sakura ran to the tree and stood underneath looking up at Naruko. "How can it be half and half?" "The reason is because I didn't love just Sasuke." She looked away from them. "The problem with my love was that I was in love with two people at the same time." The answer surprised both Sasuke and Sakura. Sasuke made his way over to Sakura and looked up to Naruko. "And the other person?" Naruko looked back to him. Then slowly her gaze shifted to Sakura. It was Sakura. Sakura's eyes went wide at the confession. "You were in love with me?" Her face scrunched up in confusion. Naruko took it for something else though. "Yeah, and I'm really sorry," she said as she faded again. "Baka!" Sakura yelled and she punched the tree, shattering the trunk. Sasuke had to shield his eyes from all the splinters. Sasuke looked around the area but didn't see Naruko anywhere, so he just asked, "When did this happen?" Then they heard people, a lot of people. Looking around, they noticed a bunch of children by the academy, but they were all transparent as they walked about. Walking closer, they began to recognize a few of the kids. Some were from the Rookie 9 while others had just been in the same classes as them during their academy days. "It was on the day I started at the academy," Naruko said from high atop the academy sign. She pointed off away from the crowd to a lone tree with a swing. Sasuke and Sakura looked to see a transparent younger version of Naruko sitting on the swing, watching the other kids playing and messing around. She had a sullen look on her face. Slowly a nagging feeling began to poke at the back of Sakura's mind. That's when she saw a younger version of herself walk over to Naruko and talk to her, but they couldn't hear what they were saying. You were the first person to approach me, did you know that, Sakura? She asked as she brought one knee up and rested her chin on it, watching the exchange between the two younger selves. Sakura watched as her younger self talked for a moment to the younger Naruko, who stood up but then sat back down. Then young Sakura was called back to the group of children. She remembered the action, but for the life of her she couldn't remember what she had said. She looked back up to Naruko with worried eyes. What did I say to you? She felt so guilty even asking. Naruko just smiled down to her, reading her look and knowing exactly what she was thinking. It's fine, Sakura, we were children. I would never expect you to remember. Plus to you I'm sure they were very simple words, but to me, they were a lot more. She looked back to the tree and then to the group of playing children. They laughed and smiled, Sakura along with them. You asked if I wanted to play too. It was the first time someone had asked me to join them. It felt like I was feeling the warmth of the sun for the first time. I was so happy and was going to join you, but then I saw the looks of the other children as I stood up. That hateful glare that came from those who feared me, who wanted me to do nothing but disappear. I knew if I joined you then the children would avoid you as well, so I declined your offer. Sakura was starting to feel her eyes become teary, and this time she felt that she couldn't hold it back. From that day on I was in love with that kindness that you hold within. I watched as you grew more like the other and gave me the same glares. It hurt, but I didn't blame you. It was how things were and I knew that. Even though you seemed to have forgotten, I still watched you. Your training in the school, working with other students, the fights with Ino, then finally the day of graduation. I laughed when we became teammates along with Sasuke. I wondered how fate could keep dealing me the Joker. Here I was with a girl I had fallen in love with that no longer noticed me, who ogled another, and we were all on the same team. I had to watch as my first love chased another. Naruko looked at Sakura, who now was crying a steady stream of tears as she listened. Naruko looked to Sasuke. At the time I truly and utterly hated you, Sasuke. The confession made Sasuke flinch and Sakura looked surprised. Didn't she say she was in love with Sasuke too? Sakura thought. Naruko faded and was suddenly on the ground but flickered and faded again. This repeated, and each time she grew closer and closer to the bridge. Sakura and Sasuke followed after her until all three were standing in the center of the unfinished bridge. Naruko knelt and touched the ground, sliding her hand back and forth along the wood. I hated you so much, Sasuke. It was one reason I wanted to beat you at anything. Thought I had never said it to her. I still cared for Sakura, and to have her pining after you, well, it hurt deep down. I tried to bury my feelings and use our rivalry to forget about Sakura in that way, and for a time it worked. While we trained and did mission together I forgot about them and focused all my attention of getting you to acknowledge me. She looked back to Sasuke. It wasn't until our mission into the lands of waves did that change. Sasuke just watched her, unsure of what to say. Naruko, I never. She nodded her head. I know. It happened suddenly, just like it had with Sakura. When you and I were fighting Haku, that's when I realized my rivalry with you had developed into something else entirely from what I had wanted. When you defended me from Haku's attack and I thought we had lost you, that's when I realized that my feeling for you had changed. I felt as if a piece of my heart had been torn away and thrown into a grinder. I lost it and attacked Haku with Kurama's power. It was the first time I had lost someone precious to me. Funny thing was I hadn't come to realize just how precious. Sakura and Sasuke saw a single tear fall before Naruko quickly wiped her eye, but she was smiling after she did. When Sakura yelled out to me that you were okay and I saw you standing there, my heart filled with butterflies. Naruko was sitting with one knee up, her left arm resting on it while the other lay in her lap. When I realized how I felt, I did the only thing I thought I should. She was quiet for several minutes before saying, hide them and keep them locked away. Suddenly a powerful gust of wind blew across the bridge. Sasuke and Sakura jumped back as the bridge began to get destroyed and flew away in pieces. Naruko had faded away again and the land around Sasuke and Sakura began to shift and change. Slowly it formed into another familiar landscape, the gate to Konoha. Sasuke and Sakura were standing just outside of the gates while Naruko was leaning up against the center of the gateway looking into the village. I managed well for a long time. I smashed those feelings down into the lowest place I could find and tried so damn hard to keep them there, but it was so hard when you left, Sasuke. They all watched as a group of people came running into view. It was the team from the mission to retrieve Sasuke. The group talked, and just as they were about to leave, a young Sakura came up to the group and talked to Naruko. When you asked me to save Sasuke Sakura, I have to admit I was a little hurt. I hadn't meant to be, I had long since buried my feelings and knew that you loved him, but I couldn't help it. I hated myself for that. I wanted to save him just as much, sure, but for you to show so much care for him. I was jealous. You were jealous that she loved me enough to ask you to bring me back? Sasuke asked, looking skeptical. Naruko shook her head as she watched the team head out, then looked back at the crying Sakura. No. Well, maybe a little of it was that, but I was really jealous that she could show her love for you so openly, where I had to hide how I felt. The images around them faded and slowly the gate disappeared. The area became that of the third training ground again. Naruko was now leaning up against the middle post, looking down at the ground. Why did you feel you had to hide it? Sasuke asked as he moved closer. Naruko didn't look up at him or Sakura as they approached her. They stood in front of her now and still she wouldn't look up. I told you before, I was afraid. You Naruko Uzumaki were afraid of what other would think if you admitted to loving two people, one another girl. Sasuke asked, a hint of anger in his voice. You were never afraid like that before, you faced everything head up and proud. Naruko shook her head as she slid down the post. No, I never cared what others would think. I had lived with the hate and the glares for so long it didn't matter what they thought at all. Pissed, Sasuke grabbed the front of her jumpsuit and pulled her up and slammed her against the post. Then why not tell us? Naruko had tears in her eyes but wouldn't look at Sasuke. Instead she looked off to the right, way from both Sasuke and Sakura. You already answered that question earlier. I was afraid of rejection. After you came back and things were getting back to normal, I thought I was good, but when you guys got together, I couldn't anymore. I couldn't say anything. Sakura was in love with you and you viewed me as nothing more than a teammate. She turned her head to look at Sasuke, but you at least viewed me as a friend. I could live with that. I didn't want you to hate me and lose what we already had. Slap! The sound echoed in the area as everything went silent. Naruko's head was turned to the side and her left cheek now had a bright red mark on it. Sasuke and Naruko had wide eyes as Sakura had angry, teary eyes and a stinging hand that had just smacked Naruko. Sakura gripped Naruko's chin and turned her to look at her. And you had so little faith in us? You thought we wouldn't accept you or your feelings? Naruko seemed to think for a moment, then answered, things seldom work out the way one hopes for. Sakura shook her head as she couldn't believe the words she was hearing. Baka. Who was it that fought to show the world what you were made of? Who fought tooth and nail in the war to end it? Who brought Sasuke back after so long, even after everyone else had given up? For someone who fights for the hopes and dreams of others so often with such conviction, you sure gave up on yours too easily. Sakura smiled at Naruko and moved her hand from Naruko's chin to her cheek. You damn baka. The next thing Naruko knew, Sakura and Sasuke pulled her forward and hugged her. Sakura's head was resting to her left while Sasuke's was on her right, both holding her tightly, not willing to let go. They wrapped their arms around her tightly as she stood there frozen in shock. You really are a dope, muttered Sasuke. Baka of the world, Sakura whispered. Naruko was trying her hardest to understand what was happening and to hold back her tears, but they just kept on flowing. What, how? The two pulled back slightly, but only far enough to look her in the eyes. It was Sakura who answered her. Just because we love each other doesn't mean we can't love you too, Naruko. Sasuke nodded. A warm smile spread across his face. Naruko froze at the words she had desperately wanted to hear for years. She couldn't take it and began to cry uncontrollably. Sasuke and Sakura just smiled as they held onto her. Sakura moved in closer as Sasuke put one hand on her head. They let her cry all the tears she had been holding in over the years. As she cried, the world around them slowly cracked and crumbled. Pieces would break away, float into the air and fade. Slowly everything faded, until nothing but the three of them were left. They didn't notice as they too faded from the world of white. Shrine in the forest. Naruko was standing staring at Sasuke and Sakura. All of their eyes glowed with a red color, but slowly the color faded to show their natural eyes. They all gasped a deep breath as their minds returned and they took in their surroundings. Naruko backed away from the two a few steps. Naruko? Sasuke asked, worry in his voice. Sakura's eyes narrowed and slowly she slipped her hand into her pouch. Naruko didn't notice. Naruko backed away until she tripped on the stone steps that were behind her. Sasuke rushed to her side. She was shaking as he gripped onto her hand. It's just, I never thought that you would. Is this real? It can't. She began to stutter and pant, her face was flush. Sasuke reached up and put a hand to her forehead. Damn, Naru, you have a fever, we need to get you back to a inn for rest. He said as he went to pick her up, but she jerked away from him. No, I'm go good. This CA? Naruko. Sakura yelled, making Naruko look up to see Sakura right before her. When did she get so close, Naruko thought. Then Sakura lowered herself over Naruko and kissed the blonde. The sudden contact surprised Naruko as Sakura's tongue slid into her mouth and fought with hers, dominating it in a matter of seconds. Slowly Sakura pulled back and looked into Naruko's eyes. She held onto Naruko as she stared at the pink-haired girl, but everything suddenly became hazy and blurry. Sakura? Naruko said as her world became dark and she fell asleep. Sakura pulled her to her as he held the other girl to her tenderly. What did you give her? Sasuke asked. Sakura just held Naruko for a moment before answering, just a sedative. We need to get her back to town. She needs some rest, her body is so stressed out right now, and then there's her mind, she's had a lot thrown at her today. Sasuke nodded and stood. He turned and put his hands behind his back, palms up. Here, I'll carry her. Sakura stood carefully, placing Naruko onto Sasuke's back. Let's go. He nodded. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.